I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. The last regular session of the Bloomington Common Council before our summer recess here on June 4th. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Flaherty?
Here.
Ruff?
Here.
Rallo?
Here.
Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Stausberg?
Here.
Daly is not. Zulik? Here. Rosenbarger?
Here.
And Asari.
Here.
Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, this is the last meeting prior to summer recess, and I generally start meetings off with some interesting bits of information related to justice, equity, and related. And I just want to highlight some summer events and other happenings over the next month or so. So first off, June is Pride Month, so happy Pride. Pride Month is dedicated to the celebration of the LGBTQ plus community and can serve as a reminder that the fight for equal rights is ongoing. Pride Month commemorates the Stonewall riots in New York City in 1969, which sparked the LGBTQ plus rights movement. And Bloomington Pride is actually scheduled for August 23rd this year because we always delay that to make sure our student population is back in town and can celebrate that. But there are Pride events and parades this month in Indianapolis and Jeffersonville and Evansville and lots of other places around Indiana. And Pride Month was first recognized in 1999. Second, I want to highlight World Refugee Day, which was mentioned by a staff member of Exodus at public comment mic a couple weeks ago. World Refugee Day is celebrated internationally on June 20th as a day of awareness and recognition of the strength and courage of people forced to flee their home countries to escape conflict and danger and then settle in new lands. An event to celebrate our local refugee population is this Saturday, June 7th from 3 to 6 at First Methodist Church. And World Refugee Day was first established in 2001. And lastly, I want to remind us all about the Juneteenth celebration. And Juneteenth is recognized on June 19th each year. The Juneteenth commemorates the end of slavery in the United States. And this year, the Bloomington Juneteenth celebration will be on Friday, June 13th in Switchyard Park from 2 to 9 p.m. And Juneteenth was just made a federal holiday a few years ago in 2021. And I'm highlighting these three occasions as a reminder of the progress that has been made, simply to commemorate these events and that it is so important to keep acknowledging and celebrating our diverse community and community members. And without that diversity, we would be a lot less interesting. So moving on to our agenda summation for this evening, we have no minutes for approval. So we will move straight into the reports section. First, we will hear reports from council members, and second, we will have reports from the mayor and city offices. And seeing as this is the last meeting before summer recess, there are lots of reports tonight. We will have an environmental commission report, and then a report from the planning and transportation department regarding the UDO, and then finally have the economic and sustainable development department giving us the annual tax abatement report. A maximum of 20 minutes is set aside for each of these reports as a whole unit. So I do expect that we will have to extend that report time this evening from the mayor and city offices. After that, we will have reports from council committees, and I do want to note that this afternoon there was an updated agenda sent out as a packet addendum. So under council committees, there will be a report from the Sidewalk Committee and then also a report from the Jack Hopkins Committee. That will be followed by reports from the public. So that will be the first opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda this evening. After that, we have appointments to boards and commissions, and I do believe that we have some of those this evening. And then we will get into our legislation for second readings and resolutions tonight. The amended agenda changed the order of this a little bit. We will start with Ordinance 2025-22, authorizing and approving a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Henderson Court Housing. And then we will have Ordinance 2025-21, authorizing and approving a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Cambridge Square. Lastly, we will finish up our legislation with Resolution 2025-09, allocating Jack Hopkins Social Service Program funding for 2025. After legislation, we will have any additional public comment. Anybody who has anything else they want to add for items not on the agenda, a note about council schedule and adjournment. So, having wrapped up that summation, council member reports, and I will start, I can't remember where I started last week, so I think I'll start on my right tonight. Did I start with you last week? Yeah, great. So let's start on my right with Councilmember Flaherty.
No report other than a suggestion for future consideration, which is that we could rotate where it starts. So it starts with somebody besides the two people on the end every week.
Oh,
Just
that's a
thought.
great
The way we do
idea.
votes, you know, the way we, all right, just putting it out there.
Thank you. I will do that. Councilmember Ruff.
No report tonight, thank you.
Let's go up to Councilmember Rallo online.
I have no report, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you. I have a few things to mention tonight. First of all, I'm wearing bright orange 2 days in advance of Wear Orange Day, which is on June 6th this year. And it is a day to commemorate people who have died from gun violence in this country and to call for common sense gun control to avoid future deaths as a result of firearms in this country. Every day in the U.S., 125 people are shot and killed, and hundreds more are wounded due to gun violence. The leading cause of death in 2022 among children and teens was gun violence. It is a public health epidemic. It is a social epidemic. It is a major problem in our society that we need to remember and work towards solutions. Why orange? So on January 21st, 2013, a 15-year-old young woman named Hadia Pendleton marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade, and less than a week later, she was shot and killed on a playground in Chicago. Soon after this tragedy occurred, her friends commemorated her life by wearing orange, which is the color hunters wear in the woods to protect themselves and others from being shot. So this has been a day of action and remembrance for several years in honor of Hadia and all the other victims of gun violence. So wear orange on Friday. I also wanted to say that my constituent meeting in June is a week earlier than normal, so it will be this Saturday, June 7th, from 11 a.m. till 12 noon. With two options. You can either join via Zoom or in person in the McCloskey room, which is room 135 here in City Hall. You can find the Zoom link on the City Council webpage. And finally, just a report regarding recycling. So the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County started a new contract with Rumpke for handling their recyclable materials starting June 1st or June 2nd, one day. And one big change is that you can now recycle waxed paper cartons, like milk cartons, cartons that, you know, some soups come in and other drinks. You just need to try to remove the plastic spout, and then you can save up a box of those and bring them to the Waste Reduction District, either on South Walnut Street or one of the other locations. So that's good news as far as recycling goes, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask you if you can put those things in your recycling bin too?
I'm afraid not, because Republic Services does not recycle those, and the city's contract is with Republic Services.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Down the other end, Councilmember Asari.
Two somewhat quick reports. The first thing is that I just got back from attending the Global Entrepreneurship Congress in Indianapolis, which brought together this ecosystem of builders and policymakers and researchers and from around the world, all working to strengthen innovation and inclusion in economic growth, especially in cities and regions like ours. And the central message, I should say it was super cool because there were we were very well represented at this Global Congress, both in terms of attendance. I mean, a lot of IU folks, obviously, but a lot of folks from the BEDC. Jen Pearl, I saw a second ago, was there, so was Val Pena. Folks from the ESD, one of our newest employees was there. It was really cool to see them. And also many people who are speaking, highlighting things that we're doing here, like John Zodi, for example, gave a really cool session on CFDI friendly and sort of the things that we're doing here in Bloomington. So that was super, super cool. Just a handful of things that I got from it, though, just to add to the ongoing conversation. The first one is how important local specialization is. They argued that cities that focus on specific sectors or strengths, whether that's climate or tech or creative industries or cybersecurity, tend to attract more investment, more talent, more buyers for local innovation. And so they sort of argued against this model of just general innovation hubs rather into focused innovation hubs. I thought that was a strong, interesting argument. The importance of mapping ecosystems to strengthen collaboration. They talked about how placemaking can be useful for economic development, and also talked about how culture matters as much as capital, and giving people certainty when they come to City Hall. So a lot of the sessions that I attended were for policymakers thinking about how do you make good partnerships with businesses, with investors, with the type of people who want to come and do cool things in your city. And time after time, the stories that were told of success were of cities who spent their time simplifying their processes, giving clearer expectations for outcomes for people, and that they aligned those processes with the clear values and outcomes that they wanted to achieve. So that was, I think, really encouraging, and I'll be happy to share more about that over the coming weeks and months, as I'm sure others who attended will as well. My other short little update, and I don't tend to give sort of personal updates as much as because we sort of said as a group that we would mostly spend time talking about the ways that we spent our time this week. But on a very personal note, this Sunday, as much as we've been talking about all of the many things that we're observing in this month and the month that just passed, was National Cancer Survivor Day. And this is a day that honors the millions of people across the globe who faced a cancer diagnosis and lived to tell their story. And of course, for me, this is super personal because just 2 days before that was my 7th anniversary of being diagnosed with leukemia. And I remember so clearly that moment, that stillness, I guess the clarity, but also the sort of sense of fear. As I was thinking about it this weekend, I remembered why I got into politics to begin with. I used to attend political meetings and often felt that my voice was not represented, that I was not seen in those contexts. And it sort of stirred me up, I think, to, this is the part where I'm going to say sorry, but it stirred me up to a reminder of why we're all here. And I think it's so easy sometimes to get caught up in process. And actually, somebody also is here who said this to me, and I saw you walk in, but now I don't see you anymore. And so as I'm thinking about why we're here and what it is that we have an opportunity to do, I wanted to remind myself, because I think I'm guilty of this, of the times that we act like we have so much time to do good. But the reality is that, tomorrow's not promised. And I think that's a reality that I live with on a day-to-day basis. But certainly it's true of our political time. And so I just am publicly saying my recommitment to the urgency of public service. With that, I also wanted to apologize to Councilmember Flaherty and Councilmember, I forgot your last name just now because you're sitting next to me, sorry, Councilmember Rosenbarger, particularly because, I think that when we've been talking about some needed changes to like our development ordinance, I have opted often to say, well, let's try to do big things and use our time to do those things things, but I actually think that, and the person who was here that I no longer see talked to me afterwards, and I forget their name, I'm so sorry, but about the importance of incrementalism. So do what you can do while you can do it. And so anyways, I just thought I'd take this personal moment to say that it's such a pleasure working with you all. It's such a pleasure to have the opportunity to serve the city of Bloomington, to make sure that we center the residents of the city in everything that we say and do. And so with that, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that thoughtful report, Councilmember Asari. Those ordinances that didn't get introduced had 4 votes. If you would like to incrementally make UDO changes, I am happy to bring them back with your 5th vote. I don't mean that as a joke, and so I'm very serious that, actually what I'm going to talk about tonight is some properties with affordable housing that we're at risk of losing 29 affordable units. So it's just very timely also that the UDO needs to be updated as soon as we can. So my report is about Seminary Point Apartments. So just for an orientation, these are the properties just north of Kroger on 2nd Street. So it's the corner of College and 2nd Street. It's 3 buildings owned by the county, owned by Monroe County. And in these 3 buildings, there are 29 residential units and a handful of our small businesses and nonprofits that live there. So it's just under 2.5 acres. It has My Sister's Closet, Blue Tip Billiards, Friendly Beast Cidery, and Jeff's Warehouse. These properties are in our Bloomington Urban Enterprise Zone, so they have access to, property owners have access to different grants. The small businesses have access to grants, and residents also have access to grants because it is in the enterprise zone. Some good things, other good things about these properties is that they do provide 29 residential units that are pretty affordable for Bloomington. So monthly rents range from $400 a month for a 1-bedroom up to $700 a month for a 3-bedroom. This is I would say, one of the most convenient and connected locations to live in Bloomington. It is literally across the street from a Kroger, and it is on our Beeline multi-use trail. It's a really neat community of neighbors. I've been getting to know some of the tenants. Folks hang out and really consider each other family. And it acts as a neighborhood hub. So it is, just a little bit away from our Kirkwood and our square. And so people can come there and do quite a bit. You can shop for clothing, you can shop for furniture, you can play pool, you can grab a beer, and you can grab something to eat. So a lot happens right in this property. I've been talking to the tenants because a couple things. One is that the apartments, some of them or all of them, are not really the best living conditions, right? So I've talked to tenants about a dead rat in a common hallway that wasn't removed for months, or rotting treads on stairs that weren't replaced for months, gutters that have been rotting and you can't park or walk under them because in the winter icicles hang and can be quite dangerous. There is an organization in Bloomington, Bloomington Homes for All. They are on Instagram, and they are a housing advocacy organization that is part of the National Homes for All network. That this national network demands affordable, safe, and permanent homes for all. So they are working with residents, all the residents that are wanting to participate in trying to save these properties owned by the county, because the bad, I went through a lot of the good, and the bad is the living conditions that need to be improved. And some other bad is that leases aren't being renewed past June or July of 2026. The county is planning on demolishing these buildings, and I just think it is a real shame, right? It is 29 naturally affordable occurring units in our downtown area. And so if anyone is out there and wants to be a part of that, I think you can get in touch with Bloomington Homes for All on Instagram, and they may eventually make a Facebook page, I think. There is an article in the HT about it. It came out on May 30th, and there's also an op-ed in the HT about it. So I just wanted to bring that up, that there are folks out there trying really hard to advocate and keep our affordable housing. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Zulik.
Yes, thank you. Happy Pride, everybody. I just want to talk a little bit about what Pride is and what it means and how we can celebrate and continue to advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. As a reminder, the Stonewall uprisings were a product of police raids on gay bars in New York City, and 2 Black transgender women, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, were credited with kind of leading the charge in the Stonewall uprising and advocating for LGBTQ plus rights. And so I think that we have to always remember that pride, in the same way as feminism, always needs to be intersectional. Remember that feminism doesn't exist without pride, and anti-racism doesn't exist without pride. And we have to remember that all of these things are coexisting. And when we think about how to celebrate pride, remember the Stonewall uprisings were not peaceful. They weren't peaceful because sometimes when our oppressors are so in our face and so violent, the only option is to protect ourselves. And so I will remind people, in the same way that you celebrate pride, fight for pride too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Daley.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to start off with Happy Pride, everyone. And I want to take a moment to say that my heart goes out to the Jewish community right now. Once again, we are left heartbroken and frightened and angry with yet another anti-Semitic attack. And so I just want to acknowledge those feelings and to state that, you know, we need to stand with our Jewish friends. I stand with my Jewish friends and residents. The timing, once, you know, well, it's been happening more and more recently with these attacks, but right now, you know, it's the beginning of Pride Month, and so it's just another reminder that our presidential administration is not only turning its back on many vulnerable members of our country, but in many instances, their actions are encouraging terrible mistreatment of marginalized groups because people are being influenced by what they hear coming out of the mouths of many of our leaders. And so just take this extra moment, please, to remember not only this month, stand with our LGBTQ community, our Jewish community, our immigrant community. Let's remember that this should be year-round, that we're standing with them and supporting them. And then actually, I want to give a big thank you to Councilmember Piedmont Smith. You took a lot of my public comment that I was going to make, so thank you very much for recognizing Wear Orange. For the past decade, I've been observing Gun Violence Awareness Day. It's been a really big part of my life. I wasn't together enough to have my orange T-shirt together. I have many, but thank you very much to the administration, too, for also declaring Friday Bloomington Gun Violence Awareness Day and helping us with the orange. Everybody, please put on some orange. I know it's a tough color, but you can find some. And you know, one further action that you could take is connect with our local Bloomington Moms Demand Action group. Reach out, just sign up even on our website if you're not already signed up. Reach out, find out how you can get involved because I think gun violence being the #1 cause of death for our children in this country is absurd. I mean, there's no other word for it. So Moms Demand Action, Every Town for Gun Safety, even look up Sandy Hook Promise. There's many ways that you can help support reducing the number of gun violence deaths that happen every day. And then, you know, Councilmember Piedmont Smith mentioned 125 Americans are shot and killed every day. Twice that number are injured. And these are life-changing injuries that I'm talking about. So it's not just that 125, it's hundreds every day have their lives altered forever by gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you. I was also told that Councilmember Rollo does indeed have an announcement to make. If you want to go ahead, Councilmember Rollo.
Yes, thank you, President. Strasburg, first, thank you to my colleagues for observing Pride Month and for bringing our attention to gun violence. I wanted to announce that Councilmember Ruff and I will have our monthly constituent meeting on June 21st at 10 a.m. And you can find the link at bloomington.in.gov/council. We usually go for over an hour, about 90 minutes, and we'd love to have you participate. So that's June 21st, 10 a.m., and the link's on our calendar. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And in recognition of the time right now, I have a very quick little council member announcement that is also my constituent meeting. I will continue to have constituent meetings this summer. My next one is also scheduled on Saturday, June 21st at 11 o'clock. And I do those in person. If the weather is crummy, I'll be in McCloskey room down the hall. And if the weather is beautiful, then I will be outside in the mayor's tent. If you don't know, the mayor has a tent at the farmer's market each Saturday with a different staff or department recognized there. So I'm crashing the mayor's tent. I do have permission to crash the mayor's tent. So I'll be there on Saturday, June 21st from 11 to noon. And then also I need to contact the department that's going to be there on July 19th. But I'm hoping that that's okay with them too, as I'm looking across the room at when they're signed up for it. So thank you very much. That was a lot of council member reports. So now moving on to the mayor and city offices. Who is here from the Environmental Commission to... Wonderful. If you want to come up to the mic and introduce yourself. And as I said before, this section of the meeting usually is 20 minutes, and I'm just going to have to play it by ear to make sure that each of these reports gets their due this evening.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Albright, Chair of the Environmental Commission. Thank you for giving me some time, hopefully less than 20 minutes, to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished in 2024 and, at this point, what we've been doing in 2025 as well, and kind of where we've set our sails for the year and for the years to come. So on this slide, you can see the smiling faces of your current Environmental Commission. Last year, we had a few different folks leave due to graduations, due to just resignations, and also I want to draw attention to Linda Thompson and Mike Litwin, who were both longstanding commissioners, both served for decades and really brought a lot of change, a lot of impact to the Environmental Commission. So seeing Linda retire and having Mike finally step away from the commission was a big loss for us, but we very much appreciated their contributions. So as you know, this past year, we have reworked our mission statement. So it was a bit outdated as far as the language and the priorities for the commission that we are today. So our current mission for the EC is to promote the stewardship and preservation of the city's environment and natural resources by seeking out and responding to emerging issues, addressing them with sound long-term policy recommendations, and increasing local environmental awareness and engagement. And what you'll see is that that is sort of where we are focusing here this past year and years to come. For 2024, we set our priorities around our biodiversity working group, as well as our continued outreach programs and activities in the community. I'll go through those in a little bit more detail. For the biodiversity working group, you may recall last year I came in and talked a little bit about our habitat connectivity plan, something we were very excited about, and something that definitely needed some additional edits for functionality, user-friendliness, and keeping it up to date. So that was something we knew we wanted to focus on. We also knew we wanted to draw more attention to some of the native plants, native pollinators, how they work together to promote biodiversity in Bloomington. And so in order to do that, we focused our Eco Heroes theme for 2025 around the concept of native insects. We created some additional materials for our tabling that had to do with insects in Bloomington, and also have been pursuing a Bee City status on behalf of the city of Bloomington. So it's something that we're continuing to work on, and as I'll mention here for the year to come, we've also been doing some bigger steps in the progress for the habitat connectivity map. We also love outreach and activities with the community. Part of what we try to do is stay visible to the community because Bloomington does have an incredible natural space. Our air, our water, our land use are all really, and the biodiversity of our city are all really important aspects of who we are as a city and what makes us so special. And so we want to make sure that our city knows that not only can you talk to us about what's going on or raise your concerns, but we'd love to have more commissioners join us and participate. So for those listening, we are welcoming applications to join the commission. But here you can see a few activities we participated in. We always table at the IU Bug Fest. We had an entomologist on our commission for a few years, and that was really wonderful having her expertise. We attended the Grandview STEM Night at Grandview Elementary, which was our opportunity to talk about how the technology of using the Habitat Connectivity Map can help you connect with and understand your local environment. And then, of course, we have our annual Eco Heroes event. Last year, the theme was Drops to Drain and focused on Bloomington's stormwater. We had over 30 submissions from young children to adults that talked about how to ensure quality stormwater, how we can all take steps to positively affect that or to mitigate any hazards that might be impacting our local stormwater. That was something that we connected with the City of Bloomington Utilities Department, put together materials so that educators could talk to their students about it, and with 20 different sponsors bringing in prizes and different forms of support, we were able to participate in the Earth Week event at Switchard Park last spring, where the mayor congratulated all the different winners. Always a really good time. And then, along with our other kinds of outreach, something that we really want to make sure we're doing is connecting with folks beyond our commission, both other organizations, individuals, commissions, boards in the city. And so, as I mentioned, one of the things that we are prioritizing this year and that we really kicked off last year was pursuing a B City status. That's something that we collaborate with the Parks Department for. That's something that IU's Office of Sustainability worked with us on, as well as they pursued the B Campus status. We also have the invitation to speak up for organizations or businesses or individuals who are doing things to positively impact the environment of Bloomington. And so we wrote a letter of support for a variance that was requested by an urban farm with an educational program. We support a local organization that is getting its footing and saying, we are trying to make Bloomington more sustainable and protect our environment. And we say, that sounds good. We'd love for you to continue that conversation with council, with the mayor and the city. And then also weighing in on how land is used and what considerations are being put into place as we are developing a city that is so special and has so many environmental details to it that we really want to consider in that progress. We also wanted to make sure that we are working with the city's own climate plan. As you know, that's the Climate Action Plan is something that's been in place. So we, of course, we're excited to participate in weighing in on thoughts on how that's coming together, including having Sean Mia come and talk to us about the plan as well as the climate dashboard, which is a way for us to bridge what the city is doing and the different boards, commissions, and departments with the community who might be interested in knowing what's happening with their air, their water, their land use. So we're very excited to be part of those conversations and make sure we are sharing our support and our ideas. And also helped with some of the installation of the technology used to gather data about the air quality as the surveys were taking place last summer. And lastly, we were trying to get creative with what we might do. So we did some different things this year. We had interviews with WFHB. We were on a local podcast. There was an article in B Square, and we also submitted some op-eds about some of the House bills that were taking place that were of concern to the environment as well. So like I said, we're trying to make sure that we are reaching out to the community, and we continue to prioritize that in the years to come. Speaking of the years to come, one of the things that we did this year was talk about our long-term priorities. And what we identified is that we've got kind of two buckets that keep coming up for us. One is making sure that we as a commission are working efficiently, that our onboarding process, that our presence out in the public are all really mindful, they reflect who we are as a commission today, and that they are effectively building bonds, bridges, connections with our community. So that's something that we definitely want to make sure that we are keeping our finger on in the years to come. And then also continuing to grow and reach out to others in the future. So that means having workshops, whether led by EC members or inviting in guests to teach us more about the things that we are weighing in on or that we're curious about. Just continuing that education between our group, the community, and the larger environment. We also, as you know, published an air quality report. So we're currently working on one of those for the water quality and working with some larger data sets from IDEM and working with the utilities department to make sure that that reflects accurately where we are as a city with our water quality and what our recommendations may be on various levels. We also have a lot of interest in supporting some of the changing regulations for how the city operates. And so one of the things that we talked about was, as we are shifting some of the language around riparian buffer measurement, making sure that we as a water quality subcommittee on the EC are able to help support that and say, can we potentially put together a way to contribute to a stream inventory to ensure that we are keeping our eye on how this is working, or is it not working? What conversations can we help facilitate? And then also, like I mentioned, city certifications like B-City, and then also expanding into the world of if there are grants or funding available for some of these projects that may require experts beyond our skills or time that our commissioners just don't have, that we can bring in further support. So that's something we haven't really done a lot of in the past, and we're excited to do it in the future. I'm not going to go through this whole slide. There's lots of words on it, and it is in the packet, so feel free to take a look at it. But these are the things that we said in 2025, we really want to do this stuff. And this, as you can see, covers a lot of ground. And in parentheses after each point is sort of the subcommittee, the working group that would be hosting that conversation or that initiative. And when it comes to admin, that is really working closely with our liaison, just as some of it is a little bit more formal. But the water quality working group is one that's on here. The Eco Heroes, of course, is always going to be on there. But we also have introduced a light pollution working group because we do know that that does influence migration habits. It does influence just the general biodiversity capabilities of our city. And as our city is growing and changing, that is a responsibility that we want to make sure that we are thinking about. So that's something that's new that we're launching this year. I wanted to take a moment to share what is going well for the EC. And also, where are we facing challenges? Because that's a reality of being on a group of this nature as well. What's going well is that we're, as you heard, doing a lot of collaborating with different partners, different members of the community, and that's fantastic. That's the goal, is to be a bridge across our different communities and what we're capable of building together. Some of the things that we've been working on have been long-fought projects. You've heard me talk about the Habitat Connectivity Plan. We have different reports that we've worked on over the years, and our commission is still really enthusiastic about that, and we're eager to share that with you all. When it comes to working with the Bloomington community, whether it's tabling, whether it's having different events, that's something that means a lot to us, to have them chime in and say, that's really cool. I didn't know that. That's something I'll try. And so having that feedback feels really good and is another way for us to revisit what is working well and what we enjoy doing to contribute to the city. And then staying active in the city, we're continuously looking for opportunities to be out in the community. Obviously, we all have lots of different time commitments and things like that, but the enthusiasm is there, and we do try to make good choices about how we can be present for the city. Now, when it comes to the challenges for 2025, unfortunately, some of these are a little bit out of our hands, but some of them are areas that we are looking for solutions to. The first one is the hardest one, and it is complex and inefficient changes to communication. In the last year or so, we understand that there are some interpretations of the open door laws that are changing how our commission communicates with each other. I would say that is the hardest thing for us to navigate, considering that our commission is voluntary. Many of us have full-time jobs, are in class, have children, have responsibilities that really limit how much time we can put into the way that we operate for the EC, despite being very passionate about it. What we have learned is that because of the way that we need to interpret these laws, we cannot communicate with each other directly by email. We need to go through our liaison in any communication that has to do with EC, besides, I believe it's besides maybe setting up a meeting or talking about things that are not EC related, like I got a new car, where did you get it, kind of thing. But if we're talking about the EC, it's our understanding that, and when I am putting together the list for sponsors for the Eco Heroes event, for example, I cannot communicate directly with the rest of the subcommittee via email without going through our conduit through the city. The alternative to that, and so that makes it really hard. It takes away our liaison's time to do her full-time job, which I very much respect and understand that that is the priority. The alternative is for us to be meeting face-to-face to have these conversations. That in and of itself requires advance notice, reserving a location, specifically a public location where we can publicly note that we are gathering. One of the things about the commission that I'm fully aware of is the privilege it takes to be able to be on the commission. It's voluntary, and it is something that requires time outside of whatever your other responsibilities are, There's a limit to how many virtual meetings you can attend, and so being able to be flexible in your work, in your responsibilities, in your caregiving, to be in these meetings is something that takes privilege. And I would hate to see an inequitable leaning towards folks who are able to have those circumstances versus those who maybe don't have the flexibility and could communicate via email, but we're no longer able to in a way that is efficient or effective for us. It's not impossible, but it sure makes it hard. So that is something that we've been dealing with. It's been very difficult, and we are working hard to not diminish the enthusiasm for our commission, but it slows down that beautiful list of goals we have for the year, that incredible list of 3 to 5 year priorities that we have. We are passionate about it, but it is very hard. That is a major challenge for us. Right now, things are difficult in the United States, and folks are torn in a lot of different directions. Energies are low, spirits are compromised because of what is happening across funding, across protections for individuals, across the way that we treat each other. General engagement right now is low across a lot of different volunteer and selective activities. We understand that. So when it comes to eco-heroes, when it comes to people coming up to our table, we know that we may not see the same level of enthusiasm that we would have a few years ago. That's a challenge because we love to keep people excited, but we understand that right now, maybe engagement's not gonna be as strong as it was in the past. We currently have some vacancies on the EC. We're so excited about our new commissioners that have joined us in the last several months, but we still have some vacancies, so that spreads the work a little bit more thinly between the group that we do have. So that's a challenge that we have from time to time. But the folks we have now are very committed and working on lots of different things, so that's really exciting. And then lastly, there's some changing legislation at the state and federal level that impacts the things that we talk about, the work that we try to do. And some of them are about funding, some of them are about protections for things like wetlands that really are, that are damaging to our larger environmental safety for our state, for our city, for our country, and our planet. And so that's something that when we're working through what our priorities are, we understand that that will be impacting what we do. So a challenge, for sure. But last time I was here, you asked me what you could do to help. And I really appreciated that question then, and I came even more prepared this time. So how can you help? Beautiful council folks. First things first, when it comes to processes. Like I said, we just got a bunch of new commissioners, really appreciate that. And as you know, the speed with which we can get interviews and get new commissioners is always helpful. So as we're able to get new commissioners on, we appreciate your expediency in that process. Also, when there are things that we might need to have your input on or your approval for, just being able to communicate clearly about what that process needs to be. I know that when it comes to B-City, for example, that's something that we've been communicating a lot about. So clarity there is really helpful, and that's just something that we'll continue to work together on. Like I said, we have a B-City certification initiative that we are putting together. It is not yet at resolution stage, but it is making its way there, so that's something to be aware of. And as I mentioned, we have a new subcommittee for light pollution. And so one of the things we're thinking about, does it make sense for us to pursue a dark sky place certification? It may not, but that's something that may be a conversation that we're hoping to have or some input that we're looking for from our council. So I mentioned how difficult communication is for us, and I would love to have a solution. The only solution that I have, and I'm open to hearing other ideas from folks on the council or what other boards or commissions have done to bridge this gap. One of the issues that we have in our email communication is that we are all private residents and we're just using our personal email accounts to talk to each other and to receive the agendas and all that. One thing that would improve our ability to communicate is if we had publicly accessible email addresses that the city or whomever could gain access to if they needed to for any sort of transparency. If the environmental commissioners each had commissioner email addresses through the city, that would allow us to communicate directly with each other. And, well, that's my impression that it would, but I may be wrong on that. But basically, what I would love is if there is a way that we can create a level of transparency in our exchanges that allow us to be able to communicate in small groups or in large groups about non-voting issues, but just building out materials, working through decision-making. So we would love to hear any solutions for how to bridge that difficulty, because like I said, it's a tough one. And then lastly, we just invite you to join us at our meetings to bring up ideas you have, questions, things like that. So that is where we're at. This is our wonderful commission. Tomorrow is World Environment Day, which is a day that's meant to raise awareness about how we all engage with our environment, how we can protect it. So I invite you to celebrate that, as well as honoring some of the other themes throughout the month and throughout the days to come. But thank you. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you for letting me use all my time. And I'm happy to hear your questions. We have some folks from the commission here too. But again, thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll ask, are there council member questions? And then acknowledge that I'm pretty sure that Councilmember Rallo online has a question if we want to bring the presentation down. And there we go. Councilmember Rallo, go ahead.
May I? Thank you. Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Albright. I really appreciate your presentation. I was once on the Environmental Commission, I joined about 30 years ago when Mike Litwin did, actually. And I have a great deal of respect for you and your commissioners and the role you play. All commissions are important. You have a very unique role, very important role. I'll commit to working on the communication problem. I think it's absolutely essential that you be able to do your work and communicate amongst each other for the environment of Bloomington. But I had a question about, I read in the report that the ECPC, otherwise known as the Environmental Commission Planning Committee, issued just a single report this year and is not anticipating further reports. Could you explain why that is the case?
Sure, and I might invite our liaison to talk to that a little bit more, but there are two different parts to that. One is the change in the need for those memos, simply because so much about the city ordinances have changed over the years, where the protections and the memos may not be as necessary because those requirements are built in. So that's the good news. But I think the other piece is just understanding that if there is a development or a variance that warrants some environmental reflection, that would be shared with us, but that it won't be in the same way that was so actively done in the past through just the previous structure of the role. So that's my understanding.
Is your liaison making reports to you regarding development proposals?
It's our understanding that will be when relevant or necessary, but we do not have a currently convening ECPC. That's not something that has, it does not sound that is something that we should expect to see in the future, unless it's an extending circumstance.
And is your intern, I understand they're moving to planning and transportation. Are you getting another intern for your purposes?
It's my understanding that the intern is not supporting the EC specifically moving forward. So that's also been a change for us, because historically the intern has been pretty involved. Okay,
well, I think the ECPC, and this is my opinion, is a very important committee that would objectively scrutinize development proposals and producing memos for the Planning Commission and for the council in the past. I think many of those memos have been used sometimes as conditions of approval, sometimes to improve the petition itself, including site inspections of environmental commission members. And, this has been important for water quality and tree preservation and habitat and climate and all sorts of things. So I'm a little dismayed that this is a development, because these measures were big steps forward, and the ECPC, memory serves, has been in existence for about 25 years, and the regular reports of the environmental planner, or in this case the liaison, happened at every meeting for about 30 years. And I think the EC has a very important role to play in that regard. So I guess I'll just say that I appreciate you telling me a bit about it. I'd like to explore that further. So I'll probably be attending your meetings and speaking to the planning and transportation staff about this.
I really appreciate that. There's a lot of interest from the commissioners in the ECPC staying in existence and being something that we are actively participating in. So there's a lot of interest, and so I welcome your visit to our meeting and any conversations that come from that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. We've actually used up our whole report time right now, so I'm going to go ahead and extend just for 5 minutes right now for additional questions about the Environmental Commission report, and then extend further for the other reports. So do other council members have any questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, say that I agree with Councilmember Rallo that I'm concerned that the development petitions are no longer coming to the EC as a matter of course. But my question is, so in your written report, you noted that there's liaisons who attend other government entities like BCOS, Friends of Lake Monroe, et cetera. And the MC Iris, the invasive species group, it says Linda Thompson was the liaison to that. Is that something Rachel Johnson is now doing?
Yeah, I would say that
Okay.
she attends the majority of them, yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good catch. 2024 was the Linda left of her.
Thank you. Are there other questions from council members? Councilmember Zulik.
I just have some clarification about open door law. So that's that's at the state level,
Right.
and so that's really not something that we can impact. But even federal or even government emails are subject to open door law, and so like we in our government emails operate under the same way that members of the EC operate under their personal emails, and so offering different emails would not solve the problem.
May I ask if there is a solution that you all have besides gathering in these meetings to communicate about anything?
We
You don't?
right.
It's
Yeah.
just as frustrating for us.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Other questions? Councilmember Rosenberger.
It's just answering your question. Thank you for being here. I actually was just skimming I have a 65-page presentation about open door law with FAQs. Like there are, like, you don't have to meet to do every single thing, okay? So you can work on draft documents via email or in Google Drive, as long as like everybody isn't in there at the same exact time. So, but we can talk about it, or, I mean, it doesn't have to be so inefficient. I think there are some like major misunderstandings about what can and cannot get done that has slowed things down this term, but we can work on it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That sounds like a great improvement already.
Other questions? Okay, great. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you,
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate your presentation. Our next report is Planning and Transportation Department, and let's go ahead. Director Hiddle, do you know how long your presentation is going to be, roughly?
10 minutes or less, I think.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and give us maybe 15 minutes from now, and then I'll extend again for the tax abatement. Thank you. If you want to officially introduce yourself for the record, that would be great.
Thank you. David Hiddle, Director of the Department of Planning and Transportation. Good evening. Thank you, President Stossberg, for the invitation to speak tonight. So I'm here to talk about potential UDO amendments relative specifically to housing attainability. If you'll recall, in March of this year, council members Flaherty and Rosenbarger both brought resolutions to the council, which, if approved, would have directed my department to craft UDO amendment language pertaining to a variety of things, among them minimum parking requirements, accessory dwelling units, required lot size, plexes, sustainable building practices, and a few others. Those resolutions did not advance, but I think that there was clear value in the ideas brought to the table. I sense in speaking with counselors and with the mayor and the mayor's administration and my department in the time afterward is that there's consensus on that fact, and that there is good merit and good reason to continue to explore those ideas. The addition is that that should be done with a rigorous public vetting, a public process with public engagement, and that there should be a very close look at how those ideas, if implemented, might impact Bloomington specifically. Those are tasks that are not necessarily within the wheelhouse of the council, large public engagement campaigns and sort of really directed, focused, longer-term research. So that's what we do, and that's why we're here tonight to talk about these particular amendments like them, and in general, policy involving attainable housing. So the issue that I think those particular amendments we're seeking to address is Bloomington's lack of attainable housing. Not a problem that's unique to Bloomington. In fact, it's pretty common anywhere you have a place where people want to live. But as we considered it and talked about it, we thought that in addition to those particular proposed UDO amendments, which were really not at the time proposed amendments, they were a directive to craft proposed amendments. But in addition to those UDO amendments, those ideas, there are additional ideas, I think, in the UDO that merit consideration, and even beyond the UDO, which housing policy that the city's involved with that I think should be and could be looked at to increase our opportunity to find a way towards attainable housing. So we have a project, and that's this, to look at how we can refine, modify, amend our housing policies to be able to work towards attainable housing. That project has a purpose. That project has a timeline, which I think at this, where I stand right now, is probably taking us to the end of the year. It's maybe a little bit ambitious. It may leak into January. But I would say that if we're looking at deliverables being language to be brought to the Plan Commission and then ultimately to the council, I'd like to get that on the agenda for the Plan Commission for their January meeting, most likely, so that it would be completed essentially by the end of the year. And that project has a scope which is limited. It is limited in that there are lots of factors that dictate whether housing is attainable. There is land scarcity, availability, there's workforce availability, there's the lending climate, there's the market, there's workforce, and there's the law. And here we're looking at just one of those things. That's the law, the regulatory framework, which in this case is the UDO. So it's impacting one of many things that has an impact on housing attainability, but it's the one thing that we have total control over in terms of the people in this room, the mayor's administration as well. But the UDO is written and maintained and modified and changed solely by this group. So that is the thing that you have control over. It's also limited in that we're just looking at residential typologies here. We're not looking at commercial elements of the ordinance or institutional elements or things along those lines. It's very strictly and sort of surgically focused on residential typologies. So this is no overhaul of the UDO. This is a more focused look that would be proposed. Project also has a toolkit. And I kind of use that term a little bit advisedly. We're not coming in really with a prescriptive focus, but more initially, especially with a listening focus with regards to public engagement. A lot of the good ideas that happen in the world of planning come from outside the world of planning. And I think that if we kind of go into these sessions with the public listening and wanting to hear their ideas about attainable housing, their ideas about what will work in their neighborhood, what will maybe work in their neighborhood, what will work in their neighborhood with modifications. Those are very valuable things to hear. So we're kind of going into it with more of a listening approach. Anyway, that toolkit will include a lot of the things that council members Flaherty and Rosenberger had on their list at the beginning. So we're looking at lot dimensions, cottage development regulations, modestly scaled, which is also known as missing middle or general density housing, which includes ADUs and duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. On-site parking requirements would be looked at. But we'd also be looking at, I think, other things that are in the UDO, but also outside of the UDO, such as short-term rental, Airbnb regulations. Those occupy a pretty good amount of the housing stock in Bloomington right now, and those obviously are not for long-term residents. State law does preempt a lot of a local jurisdiction's ability to regulate short-term rentals, But there are areas where we can exert a little bit of influence on how those act. We can create a registry. We can create the need for approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and under certain circumstances, those are things that the city has not availed themselves of as of the preemptive law when it was enacted in 2018. So those are things we can look at. Other things that Indiana cities are doing is putting rental caps on subdivisions. Not necessarily something that looks like a great idea off the top of my head, but in the spirit of going into this thing in listening mode and as a potential tool in the toolkit, I think that we need to look at all these ideas. Further down the line, one of the things that we can look at, and this is probably next year or the year after, is the opportunity, if such exists, for certain building code modifications. Those are conveyed essentially at the state level, but we're seeing that cities working with states across the country, even in some circumstances with red states, are enacting building code modifications that make certain types of housing easier to build, involving things like sprinkler requirements, single staircase formats. We're seeing in Canada and Western Europe, the ability to build without restrictions that I think have generally been considered, have come to be considered a little bit superfluous. So those are maybe long-term ideas we could consider. Finally, there's a possibility is to create a catalog of pre-approved, in terms of building code, in terms of zoning approvals, catalog of housing typologies that would be available for free. These are construction plans to anyone who has a desire to build. These are typically within the realm of missing middle housing. These kinds of programs have been put in place in most famously in South Bend and Kalamazoo, and along a number of places in the West Coast. And I think that there's climate could be ripe here in a number of different ways. I think that I'm speaking a little bit out of turn, but I think that Hopewell presents probably an opportunity to try that as a pilot program, which could then be used throughout the city. So there's a lot to look at. As we do research and analysis, we'd be looking at best practices that are in place. We'd be looking at peer cities, kind of the usual progressive exemplars we'd be looking at, like Austin, Minneapolis, Denver, Boulder, Seattle, Portland. A little bit closer to home, we'd look at the usual Big Ten cities, Ann Arbor and Madison. But I think it's also really important to look at peer cities that more closely match Bloomington's town gown profile, which is one where it's a very small city nestled against a very large university. And that creates its own set of complications and issues that I think those are the things that resonate with people that are likely to come against some of these ideas in opposition to them. And I think it's important for us, for me, for my staff, for all of us who make decisions and contribute to the making of decisions, not to look past that, but to acknowledge that and to look deeply into it. So our ratio of full-time residents to student residents, it's almost a 2-to-1 difference, which is much different than Madison, much different than Ann Arbor, much different than Iowa City. It's more along the lines of some other places we can look at, like Manhattan, Kansas, like Pullman, Washington, like Corvallis, Oregon. So I think if we try to focus in on where things are happening in other places that are more similar to us, we can get some ideas of how these ideas, if implemented, would impact us. And that could also go a long way towards allaying fears, I think, from people as well. Public process-wise, we're going to reach out to neighborhood organizations. There are about 12 to 15 registered neighborhood associations that meet predictably and reliably on a monthly basis, and we want to get inside. We want to get to them probably twice, probably towards the beginning of the process and then again towards the end. There's another dozen, maybe 15 neighborhood organizations that meet less predictably and less reliably on a regular basis, but tend to get activated when something's happening, and we want to get on their agendas as well. We want to speak and meet with the development community, the Chamber of Commerce, BEDC. We've already actually started conversations with Indiana University. We want to learn from them where their off-campus students live and how that has changed over time, and they're amenable to that. They actually have asked us to coordinate or to collaborate with them on developing a survey to be given to all of their faculty and staff that asks the essential questions of, where do you live? Do you live in Bloomington? If you don't, why not? What kinds of things would influence your ability to move to Bloomington? And we want to have those conversations. They're scheduled with the school district, with major employers, and additional stakeholders. Specifically, we'll utilize in-person and virtual meetings. I'd be very eager to come to council constituent meetings, and Councilmember Daley already has me set up for one of those, as well as deliberative sessions, and I think I'm scheduled for September for that. Any other council-initiated or engaged gatherings where you would like this topic to be brought up and discussed, we'd be very glad to be there. Look at targeted roundtables, targeted pop-up stations, and then a little bit later on in the process, we'll have regular office hours, both virtual and in person, where people can just drop in and ask questions about how this is going. At project's close, as I mentioned, we're going to deliver a set of policy recommendations. Most of them, more than likely, will be UDO amendments. Some of them might dig into other elements of city code, and some of them will just be ideas for policy implementation, but most of them will be UDO amendments for the council's perusal and consideration and review and feedback. That closes that. I'll mention one thing. This is a little bit peripheral, but it does have to do with housing attainability and its initiative we're about to undergo. Along with CBU, City of Bloomington Utilities, we're going to commission a third-party external audit to help us understand, looking at our permitting processes, where we can realize better efficiencies, where we can implement best practices that maybe we're not aware of that are in place elsewhere, and hopefully streamline the whole process. I do know that it's a complicated process. Our ordinance is complicated. It requires more than most ordinances throughout the state. And so to the extent that we can make that process as painless as possible, that's money. Time is money, and those are savings that can be passed on to the ultimate resident of that housing. I think that's all I have. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you so much for all of that information. And you actually spoke for longer than you thought you were going to. So I'm going to extend us another 10 minutes till 7:50.
Thank you so much.
Because I'm sure that we have councilmember questions. So Councilmember Asari.
Thank you, Director Hiddle. My questions were about the Summit PUD, and if there's any updates that you can give us about sort of where that is and what we can do as a council to keep that in the forefront of our priorities. That's really my question.
As that finished its zoning, the developer, the principal, committed to realizing a road network to and through Summit to the requirements of the city engineer, and those negotiations are happening right now. And as I understand, they've been pretty fruitful, and they're moving along, and maybe they're near conclusion. I'm not privy to that, but I think that they've gone well. And then I think that they're also negotiating TIF matters with economic and sustainable development. That's pretty much, I don't know more than that. I could find out more if you're looking for more information.
Would love that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rallo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Director Hiddle. You might have been here when I was just asking EC Commission Chair Albright about the role of the EC in planning processes. I wondered, could you tell me about your view of the EC's input in both development review and the UDO process? Or do you support the commission and various commissions having input in the process?
Sure. Since I've been here, my understanding is that my predecessor sort of, it's the best way to put this, no longer by automatic extension provided information or requested reports from the Environmental Commission for variances, cases going to the BZA, cases going to the Plan Commission, maybe with the exception of planned unit developments or larger cases. And so that's been the policy, if you will, since I was here. I was under the impression that kind of coordination trailed off anyway pretty substantially in the last few years. My thought is that where there is a development proposal that's coming before the Plan Commission or the BZA, it could be a large one, that is substantial and that would require the expertise of the Environmental Commission, that we would pull them in. Our review for variances for rezonings is all very much ordinance driven. So to the extent that environmental considerations are to be taken into account by our planners as they give their recommendations, that's driven by the ordinance. And so they're not at liberty to ask for anything additional or beyond what the ordinance allows them to ask for. PUDs are different. Those are by nature and by code, they're negotiation, so there's a lot of leeway there. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I stand on it. If there's interest in talking further about that, I'd be very glad to.
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, I'm not in any position, and I'm not making a case for directing the commission to do this or that, but just simply that their input would be welcome in the process, and that if they were interested that, planning and transportation, be willing to present development petitions to them so they could have input, especially ones that, of course, have environmental, implications.
I'd be glad to talk more about that with you and with Ms. Albright and the commission.
Terrific, because sometimes we're on the receiving end, the council. I might be looking for a memo from the Environmental Commission about a particular development, and it's always helpful. So thank you for your willingness to talk more about that.
Certainly.
Thank you. Are there other questions from council members? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hiddle, for these updates. How will you, in the public process that you're intending to go through to consider changes to make housing more attainable, how will you engage renters in that process? Because they normally are not very active or prevalent in neighborhood associations.
Well, we're going to be working with HAND, and I'd probably look for some guidance there, also from the Community and Family Resources Department. We're meeting with some advocacy groups, the Apartment Association, and others that I think might have guidance there as well. The goal is to have a broad reach, to cast a wide net. So I guess that's probably the extent of my answer now, but I very much want to come out at the end having heard from a lot of renters, and so we will figure out a way to do that.
Okay, just a caution that in my long experience, those who are active in neighborhood associations tend to be more wealthy and tend to be property owners, and so it is skewed a certain direction.
Yes, that's known and understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty.
Thank you. I had a similar question, but I think I can explore some other topics. So you referenced two resolutions that were brought on the council agenda but not introduced earlier this year. Those were 2 of 4 resolutions, and actually 5 distinct bodies of work that were collaborative with your staff over the course of a year, involving the mayor, the deputy mayor, many meetings, many emails. 2 of those resolutions were brought by my colleagues, Councilmember Stotsberg and Piedmont Smith, late last year. They passed without incident. Your staff developed, with no public input as far as I'm aware, a series of UDO changes that are making their way to us right now. And then these additional 2 resolutions were developed, again, in deep collaboration with your staff, with the mayor's knowledge, even though statements were made later that she didn't know about it, which was false. And we're going to direct a public process from the council side to look at policy, not in a vacuum, but based on comprehensive plan, climate action plan, and other existing city policies, which had thousands of people providing input over many years and many sessions. And I didn't hear any reference to existing city policy in your comments here about where we proceed. So I guess I'm curious, knowing, I guess I'm sharing that context because I think it's important for the public, because again, misinformation and false statements were made about how these things were proceeded previously. And so I gotta say, I'm just starting from kind of a lack of trust here. This is gonna undermine what the administration is working on. I will try to suspend that, but the mayor's actions have consequences, I think, and she has really done a lot to undermine that trust through obstructing work and, again, making false statements about it. So moving on from that, again, I'd like to ask the question, how does existing city policy, the comprehensive plan, climate action plan, the resolution I introduced sought to implement adopted actions in the climate action plan, how are those going to inform the policy development as well? Thank you.
Well, those are you know, the core documents that we're obligated to pay regard to as we move forward with things like this, and so they're at the center. I think the fact that the resolutions that you introduced did not get off the ground, I think, is because there was a desire for a public process to be attached to those ideas. I don't think that the content was objected to so much as the lack of a public engagement plan in the wake of you know, the 2019-20 rezoning, where plexes were denied, in the 2021, again, hotly contested, where plexes were allowed incrementally. I think just awareness of the anticipated public reaction to this necessitates that there be this very robust outreach to the public. So certainly it's definitely a given, and I think well documented, that our comprehensive plan, that our climate action plan, and that other documents that have been adopted do favor the development of diverse types of housing, and housing that is going to be able to cater to lots of different people. But again, it didn't happen when you brought it forward the first time. I think this is a way that it can happen.
Thank you. 2 minor points of clarification. One is that the council resolutions would direct a public process, so that it was always envisioned there would be a deep public process, and that was communicated at the time. Second is that the resolution that I individually sponsored did not involve any sort of missing middle housing, duplexes, triplexes, et cetera. It was strictly climate action plan implementation. So thank you for those clarifications.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other councilmember questions? Councilmember Rosenberger.
Hi, thanks, Director Hiddle. Timeline on this, I know you and I have spoken about it, that you think it can get done by the end of this year, but just wanted to get that out there. And, you know, is that still correct? Public participation happening at the end of the summer or something? And I mean, of course, you mentioned it, but it's just so urgently needed. So still the end of the year?
Yeah, I think it's ambitious. When we first started talking about this at the time of that council meeting, which is, you know, early spring, I do remember saying that we can get it done by the end of the year, and now here we are a couple months later, almost halfway through the year. It feels a little bit more constrained, but I think it's a reasonable shot.
That's awesome. I think, you know, we're a year and a half into this term, and so far we really haven't made it. I mean, we've made like zero progress toward our like changing our housing policy. So I would love to have something done by the halfway point, I guess. Just feels like we're spinning our wheels. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other councilmember comments or questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, just to speak a bit to the timeline, as council president last year, I met with Mayor Thompson monthly or nearly monthly, and I think it was in October, we met to talk about some of these ideas about creating more attainable housing. and she said she would talk to Director Hiddle and possibly have public engagement before the end of 2024 or in early 2025. So I just want to emphasize that, you know, we've been trying to get this public engagement for quite a while now, and so it has been somewhat frustrating.
Thank you. Any other council member comments or questions? Okay, I thank you very much for the information, and thank you for coming. I don't have a direct question right now, except that at my constituent meeting, which is July 19th, it is planning and transportation that is supposed to be at the mayor's tent. So I hope that I can join you there. And
Absolutely.
I assume that this may be a topic of conversation that a lot of community members might be interested in talking to us about. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to progress being made in this sector.
Very good, thank you.
So unless there are other questions, thank you very much for your report. And now we will move on to our last of our 3 reports, and we are right at 7:50 right now. Ms. Della Rosa, do you have any idea how long your presentation part is going to take?
I'm hoping for around 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then Director Cooper-Smith will also be giving a report on the pilots, which will be 5 to 7 minutes.
Well, the pilots will be under
2
legislation,
minutes max,
right?
I'm sorry?
The pilots will be under legislation, right? Or is it different?
No, this is a review, that'll be, this section of the pilots is a review of EDC activity for 2024. So it's a very brief overview.
Okay, let's extend reports then until 8:15.
I'll do my best.
Do you think that'll work?
I will try.
We'll see how
and
many
watch it.
questions we have after that. So anyway, if you could introduce yourself for the record, and I appreciate everybody's casualness this evening about reports.
For sure. My name is Andrea De La Rosa. I'm the Assistant Director for Small Business Development in Economic and Sustainable Development Department. This is the 2024 Tax Abatement Compliance Report, and we'll summarize the EDC's activity. We'll quickly cover the summary of the tax abatement program, economic impact of tax abatements, and review active pilots. The Economic Development Commission unanimously approved this report on May 20th. To keep the presentation within our time frame, I'll omit the overview section, but I left slides in the deck for public reference. So the addendum that everyone got this afternoon will have these exact slides. So what is a tax abatement? A tax abatement temporarily reduces taxes on new investment, either real property or personal property. It applies only to the increment, which is the increase in assessed value due to the project. The property's original value continues to be taxed. Projects must be located in a designated economic revitalization area. Some residential projects also require designation as an economic development target area. Approval involves review by city staff and the EDC with final designation and authorization by the Common Council through a public process. How abatements work? Most abatements last 1 to 10 years and follow a sliding scale. Personal property abatements can go up to 20 years. State law allows for alternative schedules if justified by the project. Each application includes an SB1 form, which sets baseline projections for investment, assessed value, job creation, and wages. We also weigh community-focused goals like affordable housing, sustainability, full-time employment, and contributions to local character. Projects are monitored annually through CF1 filings. Staff evaluates actual performance against SB1 commitments. Projects are classified as compliant, substantially compliant, non-compliant, and departments like HAND also review specific commitments like affordable housing. one right next to me. So the overall economic review of, or I'm sorry, the overall economic impact of the new real and personal property investment, $536 million in proposed investment, $227 million in actual investment. Assessed value increased from $170 million to $255 million, exceeding expectations. This increase meets the but-for standard. These gains wouldn't have occurred without the abatements. As far as jobs, projects reported 3,692 total jobs and $317 million in salaries. While some fell short of job targets, several exceeded wage projections, indicating fewer but higher paying jobs. For example, Woolery Mill created 60 new jobs, exceeding its target of 45, with average full-time wages around $41,000. Affordable housing incomes. Abatements also supported deeply affordable housing. New Urban Station had 11 affordable units at 28% AMI with 100% occupancy. Southern Knoll had 31 units at 52% AMI with 87% occupancy. And Union at Crescent has 117 units designated as affordable, 74 currently occupied at 64%. These projects show how abatements are leveraged to expand housing access. Southern Knoll is in its 6th year of abatement, exceeding investment, job, and wage commitments. Assessed value is 130% of its SB1 projection. 24 units serve households at or below 60% AMI, and staff recommends finding compliance for this project. Union at Crescent is 146 unit mixed income development with 102 units committed as affordable at 60% AMI. Only 74 units of the committed 102 are currently occupied, equating to 64% occupancy. This abatement has met investment and wage goals. It's undergoing remediation efforts, and staff recommends a finding of noncompliance due to the shortfall in occupancy. Urban Station exceeded investment commitments, fell short on employment, but retained wages above the proposed SB1, provided 17 rooms at or below 80% AMI, exceeding their commitment, 100% occupancy of affordable units. Staff recommends a finding of substantially compliant. Woolery Mill is a historic mill redeveloped on Tap Road, reported $4 million in real estate investment towards $6 million commitment. Phase 1 is completed, which is the event space, and Phase 2, condo hotel, have been delayed by market conditions. Overall, it's created 60 jobs versus the 45 projected. Full and part-time salaries met or exceeded original goals. Assessed value is currently at $3.09 million, and on track relative to developmental stage. Staff recommends finding of substantially compliant. So the Catalent abatement, it's actually 3 abatements, and it's a lot of information. So I'm going to blow through this pretty quick. Please stop me if something does not make sense. Uh-oh. Looks great. Catalent holds 3 active abatements now under Novo Nordisk following an acquisition in late 2024. Because the sale closed on December 26th, no new jobs or capital investments were added last year. However, the company did report strong salary and employment data based on inherited operations. 1506 for personal property, 1904 and 2206 for both real and personal property are the abatements held. Resolution 1506 and 1904 exceed investment and salary targets. Resolution 2206, early in implementation with investment underway, we recommend substantially compliant. CF1 filings reflect aggregate employment across all sites. Across all three resolutions, Catalent consistently reported a total year-end headcount of 1,811 employees. This slide compares projected and reported salary outcomes for all resolutions based on CF1 filings. The projected salaries equal to $91.4 million. Actual reported salaries at $157 million. Projected average wage was $55,000, and the actual average wage was $881,000. And these are for resolutions 1506 and 1904. For resolution 2206, projected salary was $262.8 million, and actual reported was $157.3 million. Staff recommends compliance for 1506, 1904, and substantial compliance for 2206 with continued monitoring. Real America's project at Switchyard Park is under construction but delayed due to site development issues. The project is expected to come online later this year. Staff is tracking milestones, and no compliance determination is yet required. We're also monitoring 4 pilots, and Director Cooper Smith will present those.
Thanks, Dee. So, as Ms. De La Rosa mentioned, we have pilots that we're adding to our annual abatement compliance review process. We have 2 active pilots. The first is Evergreen Village. It's a 115-unit residential care facility for residents at 60% AMI or below. Right now, this year, we're just monitoring that the payment was received. Country View is a pilot that was approved in 2022. The term is 30 years. It's 206 units for residents at 60% AMI and below. At the time I submitted this report, the payment was not yet received. We've been working with Glick Properties to try to understand what happened. So they have paid their payment and via their mortgage company, via their escrow process. And so that wasn't received yet by the controller's office. We think maybe it was misdirected to the county, but we're working with the county and Glick to iron that out. There's no concern that they're non-compliant. We have proof of payment on their end, so that's fine. And then just as a placeholder, I listed the 2 pilots that we're considering this evening. Obviously, those are not approved yet, but it's maybe helpful to look at those terms next to the terms of the 2 extant pilots. And that's all I have to say on pilots, and I think Ms. De La Rosa and I would be happy to receive questions that you have at this time.
Great, thank you so much. And just to clarify for, I think, council and the public and for myself with our council attorney and also with you guys, tonight we're not taking any action on this information, correct? So we're not actually voting to approve compliance or non-compliance. We're just receiving the information and asking questions. Is that correct, Attorney Lehner?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Do council members have any questions about this report? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you to both of you for gathering this information and preparing the report. Ms. De La Rosa said for that slide that says economic impact of tax abatements, one of the early slides, I believe you said that this shows the projects met the but-for criteria, meaning that they wouldn't have been undertaken but for the tax abatement. Could you explain how this chart gives evidence of that?
Maybe the slide deck would be helpful.
Yeah, I think the slide deck would be helpful. That should be slide 11 on the slide deck. Oh, you're close. Oh, go forward one.
One more back.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Oh, this one.
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry. This slide actually doesn't show the but-for. It shows the impact of this. However, we give abatements as a but-for. So if we weren't able to give an abatement for certain projects, they would not exist. Maybe my phrasing was off when I said that, but this shows the impact of all of these different types of abatements that we have.
So how do you gauge the but-for when you bring forward an abatement? How do you know that it wouldn't be built if it didn't get an abatement?
I think this is an evaluation that happens with input from multiple departments and really is looking at the overall financial picture of the project. And, I think there comes a point in the consideration of council where you have to listen to the applicant and then determine for yourselves, there is a bit of a risk that you're taking there, right? So if you deny an abatement and the development doesn't happen, there's evidence. If you approve an abatement and development happens, there's evidence that it's supported. I don't think we've denied an abatement and had development, which would prove a false but-for. So I think that I think we do the analysis, we do as much evaluation as we can, and then we have to walk up to the point where council is voting and there is a certain amount of risk there.
Okay, thank you. I have other questions, but I'll wait.
Okay. I saw Councilmember Rallo's hand up. Councilmember Rallo, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the presentation. So referring to resolution, this is the Catalent topic, and resolution 2206. So they failed to achieve the employment that was anticipated. And I didn't see a recommendation, maybe I missed it, of staff on whether the compliance is met or not. Is that something that's in process or what?
So I can provide some context on this one. So 2206 was approved in 2022, obviously, and it had a significant capital investment component, and then the jobs promised, I think were, I can't remember, 990. So there are two factors with the compliance. One is they have a 3-year window to become compliant with those jobs numbers. So technically they're still in that on-ramp period from the time in which that abatement was activated. And then the second factor, and this is something that you should consider when thinking through the abatement report writ large, the second factor is whether the inability to achieve a goal is within the company's power. So if there were causes outside of the company's, I'm sorry, I'm just restating that in a different order, but you know what I mean. If it's outside of their control, then we can't hold the abatement, we can't withhold it for that reason. So at this time with 2206, that abatement was approved.
Wait, could you, is it just your discretion?
No, it's stated in the code. And then I don't know if it's restated in our MOUs as well, but it's very clearly stated in the code.
Okay.
And so then I think how that would play out is if you wanted to withhold approval of an abatement, the company would have a hearing and would be able to make the case. And I imagine at that time there would be discussion about whether the factors were inside or outside of the company's control.
I see. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And just briefly, so if a company acquires another one, like Novo or Nordisk acquired Catalent, does the abatement carry over? Does the obligation and the benefits carry?
Yes, yeah. So this was the purchase of Catalent by Novo was an asset purchase, and so they did
the abatements will transfer, and with them, I think the milestones will transfer as well. But again, it's been an interesting journey. So I think what I started to say was that 2206 was approved during the height of the Defense Production Act. There was massive effort to scale up production at the site for COVID vaccine manufacturing, and we know that what happened was demand completely bottomed out of the market and really changed the volume required at that site. And so they did have subsequent, I think, 2 or 3 rounds of RIFs after that. And it was definitely not the trajectory that we thought we were on at the beginning. Nevertheless, they've really met those capital investment requirements, and we feel very optimistic about Novo's purchase of the site. We can already tell through bi-weekly meetings with the company that they're deeply engaged. They have major climate and sustainability priorities for their global operations, but also for the site in Bloomington. And so I think it will be a good news story likely when we come back for this report next year, but we'll just have to wait and see what the numbers are.
Well, thank you. I had another brief one, but I could wait.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's see if there's other questions on first round before we move to second round. Okay, I have a question about, for first round, about the Union at Crescent vacancies. So does this mean, oh, shoot, I had it. So if it's a 146 unit property and there, where is it? It's 146 units, and then they have over 60 units vacant right now. Are they just, is this property like that empty, really?
Yes.
Do you know why people are not living in those units at all?
They are, Ms. De La Rosa communicated with the company just to get additional information about these questions before putting the presentation together. They responded that the Annex Group, which was the original developer but not the property manager, took the property over later last year and has stated that they're on a remediation plan, but that site security issues and property damage are really what are driving down occupancy. I know, not to put her on the spot, but Housing and Neighborhood Development Director Anna Killian-Hansen is here. She may have additional context, but what I am reporting to you is strictly how they responded to our inquiry regarding the tax abatement.
Okay, great, thank you. Second round questions, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I have some questions about Urban Station. So in the chart on, in your slide presentation, you have that the commitment for employment was 10 jobs, and they report 4 as far as retained employment. And then for new employment, the SB1 promised 5 jobs, and the CF1 shows only 2. So I'm struggling to see how this is substantial compliance if there's only 40% of the jobs promised.
The way that we have interpreted this SB1 filing is, well, we first of all just reported the data that's in the SB1. The affordable housing abatements are always a little challenging to address in the compliance process. So the state empowers us to issue, or empowers you to issue tax abatements, and requires that we handle compliance through the SB1 and CF1 process. However, the CF1s do not account for affordable housing in any way. So on the staff level, when we're handling these abatements, we look to the SB1 and CF1 for jobs data. We work with Housing and Neighborhood Development for housing data. My interpretation of this abatement is that it is primarily an affordable housing abatement, and that the jobs were required but were really not the thing that was the most important. So the council may or may not agree with that, and I think, we're giving you our best read, and that's the context.
I see, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Since I know Councilmember Rallo has a round two, and I know that I do as well, let's go ahead and extend this till 8:25. Councilmember Rallo, round two.
Yeah, just briefly, I'm just curious about this because of what was stated. So this is not necessarily a reflection on these particular abatements, but so assuming an abatement occurs or an acquisition occurs and the abatement is acquired by, say, one corporation by another, and all the benefits that come with it, is that somewhat problematic? Because, one corporation could have a different record than another, and the one that's the acquiring entity would be, I think, I don't know, may not have gotten the abatement had it come forward originally. Is that something that we have to be concerned about?
Through the asset purchase, which was how this was handled, it is allowable to purchase the tax incentive, to purchase that abatement. So I think in this situation, whether it's easy or difficult for the purchaser, whether it's advisable for the purchaser, is kind of a discussion that's apart. But whether it's legal and whether the terms of the MOU are being conformed to is really where our activity belongs.
I see. So as long as they meet the conditions, there's nothing really that we can do to limit.
No, I mean, I think going forward, if the council decided, hey, we really want to issue an abatement to Company A, but if Company A sells and we are not open to extending that abatement to Company B or C, then you might include something like that in a termination clause in the MOU. But the state statute allows it. It doesn't limit it in any way if it's an asset transfer. So I think how we handle it in the MOU on the local level, otherwise for us, it's legal, and so therefore does it comply?
Okay, I think I've got that. I'd like to research that more. This is the first one I've encountered, so like this. So thank you.
Oh, well, actually, I don't know if you were on council then, but when Catalent purchased the site from Cook
Oh, there you
Pharmaca,
are.
we went through the same thing,
Yeah.
so.
You're right. You're right. Stand
There's your
corrected. Thank
history.
you.
Thank you. I also had a question about the Woolery Mill one, because in the development status, it says that Phase 1 is completed and that Phase 2 has been delayed given market pressures. And I couldn't tell, I mean, it looks like it's just commercial in terms of the requirements, as opposed to Phase 2 has like condos and hotels, has a residential component
Yes,
to it to
so-
some degree. But so I guess like my question is there a timeline on Phase 2 for that development? But then I guess the other piece of that question is, does the abatement depend on Phase 2?
So the project was originally, I'm just stating this to help us enter into the logic puzzle together. So the property was originally configured in two phases. Phase 1 was the renovation of the Woolery Mill and the creation of that event center. Phase 2 was planned to be, a condo development. At one point, it was being considered as a hotel development in the open field, kind of where Tapp and Weimer meet. Phase 2 had some stops and starts and ultimately hasn't moved forward. The abatement, the way it's structured, if there's no increase in assessed value on that parcel, then we're not abating what doesn't exist. So we have approved the Phase 1 investments, and we are honoring that or we're recommending that that part of the abatement be honored. And then the phase 2, they're allowed to claim an abatement at this point on additional investments, but they haven't made those investments, and so it hasn't been activated.
Okay, I think I may understand that.
A lot of the abatements have multiple layers according to when the capital investments are made. So if you approve an abatement for $100 million, but, which, whatever, that's just our number, but, and you spend 50 million in year 1, 25 in year 2, 25 in year 3, then that abatement would come to us with different layers being abated at different times and having then different lifespans when they roll off.
So it's almost like a phase-in sort of process depending
Yeah.
on when the investment happens. Okay, great, thank you. Are there other council member questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
This one should be pretty easy. Do we write the following into our tax abatement MOUs? First of all, compliance with living wage ordinance for employment, and secondly, actual occupancy of residential units.
So, interesting questions. Occupancy has not been written into the MOUs. So at this time, the abatements that exist, we've only written in the creation of those units and not the occupancy. So that was a point of ambiguity. With the Union at Crescent abatement, Ms. De La Rosa and I felt uncomfortable enough recommending substantial compliance that we felt it was better to turn it over to you all to get additional information and discuss. But that was kind of one of the points that it hinged on. And then your second question was the living wage ordinance, and it is not in all of them, and we have been discussing this on a staff level going forward, how that should be reflected in the MOUs. And Ms. Brittingham is here. I don't know if you want a more detailed answer than that. She can probably provide it as the attorney who's been supporting this.
Sure. But before you leave the podium, so on the first question of occupancy, will that be written in the future since we've had this
Yes.
problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Audrey Brittingham, City Attorney. So tax abatements are subject to the living wage ordinance. It appears that a lot of the agreements have that language in them, and it appears that some of them don't. Over your recess, we are going to reach out to all of them and ask if they would complete a living wage certification form. The ones that, for the companies that have the living wage language in their agreement, they're required to complete the certification form every year. For the ones that don't have the language in their agreement, we'll still contact them and say, this is what the living wage is, tax abatements are subject to it. You know, we would like for you to complete this certification form. The living wage this year is $16.22 an hour. We have not really had any pushback on the living wage since I took over, or since I started with the city about a couple years ago. I was working on the living wage. I haven't received any pushback yet. We will see if we receive pushback from any of these entities, particularly the ones that don't have that language in their agreement. And we can bring that information to you at the July meeting. We hope to have all or substantially all of the certifications returned before the July meeting.
All right, thank you so much for
Thank
following
you.
up on that. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's not a very high wage, so I don't think anybody should complain.
Agreed, Counselor. Any
you.
other questions on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the abatement report from council members? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for being here, both of you, all three of you. And as I said earlier, council will have to take action on recommendations and compliance or non-compliance at our July 16th meeting.
Can I just say thank you for your attention to these abatements? We spend a lot of time poring over the details, and so it's appreciated that you guys get into the weeds and ask these questions. So it's welcome.
Sure, thank you. All right. The report section has been unusually long this evening. I hope that people have found it interesting. There's been a lot of things to report on. So now we are finally through the mayor and city offices reports, and now we are on to council committee reports. And we are going to start with the sidewalk committee report. So we will first hear from the chair of that committee, Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Great, hi, thank you. So I don't know, I could make this longer or shorter. I'm gonna go with shorter, and all the information is in the packet, so if folks have questions and you want a whole debrief of all of it, I guess let me know. I'm not gonna go through the purpose of the sidewalk committee. If you would like to see that, please check out last year's report at our council meeting. So this year was different. We met in April, the sidewalk committee, there were 4 of us, and instead of a $350,000 budget, we have a $500,000 budget. And we made a series of recommendations that we hopefully will vote on tonight. So I'm just going to get right into those recommendations. Everyone looks happy, 1 thumbs up, and everyone else neutral. Okay. So my font is so tiny here. Okay, so I will say in the past, just a quick debrief, we have used a rubric for deciding how these funds will be allocated. Now that we have our Safe Streets for All priority network, we are using that network for the recommendations for the sidewalk committee. And so that network, the formula for that high priority Safe Streets for All network is in the packet as well. And as everyone knows, I think the Safe Streets for All plan has been adopted into our city goals in the transportation plan. So these recommendations are just pretty much baby steps toward our Safe Streets for All and transportation plan goals. So the first project that we are recommending, it's for an in-progress project, and it is sidewalk construction for North Jefferson Street sidewalk. That street is just east of campus, so kind of on the east side of Eigenmann and everything like that, a pretty big corridor for pedestrians and a missing sidewalk. So this would be doing $70,000 to partially fund construction of that sidewalk from 8th Street to 10th Street. It is a missing sidewalk link. Funding for new sidewalk projects. The first one is a North Union Street crosswalk between 7th and 10th Street. This is in a similar location. It's between Eigenmann and Ashton dorms. It's where a lot of folks choose to cross the street, but there is no crosswalk there to hopefully potentially cross in a safer way with drivers. It's a really long few blocks there between 7th and 10th that there is no place for people to cross. So that would be, we recommend $40,000 to fund the design of that, and that is on the highest priority network in the Safe Streets for All. Let me see. Oh, that is $90,000. I'm sorry about that, you all. That is $90,000. And then another new sidewalk project is to design a North Fee Lane crosswalk, and that is at Law Lane and around the Briscoe dorm. So that would be $40,000 to design that crosswalk. Yeah, the issue is there's a bus stop going north on the north side of the street, and there's no crosswalk for students to get to their dorm. That is on the west side of the street, and it's a place with a lot of vehicle traffic and bike ped traffic. And so then the Law Lane crosswalk would be an improvement. That's where Law Lane tees into Fee Lane, and I think there are no crosswalks there. So it's kind of a chaotic space for bike ped and drivers. Okay, and then the biggest portion of these dollars this time would be, what we are recommending is $300,000 allocated to repaving coordination projects. So this committee has talked a lot about kind of getting maybe like a bigger bang for the buck in terms of doing projects that are already potentially in place, whether it's planning and transportation, engineering, or public works. And so there are a lot of crosswalks and little connectors that could be redone while public works is repaving. And sidewalks, like crosswalks are a part of sidewalks, right? And crosswalks are the most dangerous part of a pedestrian's journey. So having proper signage and paint and everything like that and bump outs is really important. So one of those examples about like a coordinated project would be 4th Street and Madison Street, where they just had some repaving and then also added bump outs to all 4 corners of that intersection. This committee plans to meet again sometime in 2025 to discuss big topics such as what will or should happen to the sidewalk committee moving forward, what should be council's role in sidewalks and the alternative transportation fund, what is the role of public works in this committee, and we are happy to discuss that as a sidewalk committee and bring it back to council, or also potentially maybe having it as one of our deliberative sessions if people are so interested. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there council member questions for Sidewalk Committee?
Thank you.
Any questions from anybody for the Sidewalk Committee? Okay, well, I have questions. On the update on the 2024 allocations, last year there was $30,000 advocated to Green Acres traffic calming, and actually, it looks like there's a pretty big difference between the allocation and what was spent. And so it says that the remaining funds have been transferred back into the Alternative Transportation Fund, but I'm really curious as to what actually happened with those funds, if you know, and then specifically what happened to that $30,000 that was supposed to be for Green Acres traffic calming, because there was, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but there was actually a resident-led traffic calming request in Green Acres that then didn't get funded, and so then it kind of feels like, as the District 3 representative, I kind of want to be like, hey, what's going on with that $30,000 that could have been spent on that project?
Yeah, so if you remember last year, that traffic calming was added as part of our sidewalk committee budget, right? Because there were so many traffic calming requests, and we decided to kind of do an additional funding of one of them. And the bike ped coordinator says in 2024, so basically there's actually $96,000, a little over that did not get used from the council sidewalk committee's budget in the fund, but of course the fund is a lot bigger than just us. So $96,000. Basically, it's kind of neat. Usually bids come in and they're much more than we had imagined, but in 2024, bids came in lower than we had imagined. And the Green Acres traffic calming was positioned last on the priority list that we made for the funding from the council sidewalk committee. So by the time the funds came in, or the bids came in for all of the projects that were ahead of it in our priority list, the year was over and they could not get public engagement and everything done and get those dollars allocated, so they reverted back to the ATF. And so, I mean, so that is like my general answer to that. It gets a little harder to be like, then where did they go? Because they were reverted back at the very end of 2024, so then you could say they got potentially moved into 2025 with the ATF, but they did not stay with council sidewalk committee. Also because planning and transportation, we talked about it and it made more sense for it to go back to the general ATF instead of our specific sidewalk committee, so they could potentially still use it, where we would have to meet again and it would take even longer to get something else in the works. So the controller's office would have to figure out where kind of like that money went, if you want to get more specific about it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments about the sidewalk? Because I have another comment if nobody else has one. I'll take another comment then. This is, I guess, a comment, and I'm really glad that you guys are meeting again to talk about some sidewalk committee stuff, because the fact that the majority of these funds are kind of allocated in a very general way to the street projects in coordination with Public Works, just, I mean, that is just really, really interesting that part of having this money kind of in council's purview is for council members to be able to make decisions about it. And then the majority of that just went back to the administration for them to be able to make decisions about it. And I'm not saying that I necessarily have a problem with that, but I just, there's a lot of work that we could be doing. And I just don't think that we necessarily need to spin our wheels in that kind of way in terms of getting money allocated to a council committee and then giving that money back to departments to spend in whatever way. So I'll just kind of throw that out there as an opinion about sidewalk committee funds. I don't know that that's a question, but.
I'll answer that question. I think that is obviously a perspective, and I think folks on the committee have discussed a little bit whether or not they want really specific projects or not. But when we look at things like equity and like our city goals, there really are like prescribed ways to use this money. And so, I mean, we do have our Safe Streets for All plan, and from my perspective, I mean, I'm just one committee member, but to go outside of that plan and say, well, this is where, right, the city and experts and residents are saying we need our network to be, but to put it somewhere else, put funding somewhere else, to me, that's just lower priority, like pretty much factually, because of the work that has already been done to get this connected sidewalk network. So I think it is just sort of, the sidewalk committee started in the 1990s, and it really kind of was more of a, it really seemed a little more like council members saying, hey, why don't we put something here? And there wasn't a lot of rhyme or rhythm to it. And I think what I've worked on this committee since I started on it was to have more equity and more priority and more match up with our city goals.
Thanks. I support that. I guess I want to be clear about that.
Yeah, thanks. And it is tricky too to say like, well, if we're giving this money kind of and working with it with Public Works and planning, does this mean there's less? Right? I mean, there's always just such a funding problem. And it's like, so does this mean it looks like there's less overall because now Public Works can spend that money on something else? Or does this mean it's like in addition to, right, the fund? I know it's hard to explain, right? But it's hard to like track money.
Yeah.
Really,
are we
really
going to
far.
end up with a report at some point about which of those repaving coordination projects ended up getting expanded or improved in these ways with this?
Probably the bike ped coordinator will, yeah, because we always get an update on how the projects went or how they're going. Yeah.
Great. That would be great. Thank you.
Like Councilman Barallo has his hand up.
Did anybody else think of any other questions besides me about this? Councilman Barallo.
Oh, thanks. I just wanted to give another perspective, and that was that when the sidewalk committee, when the fund was set up and the sidewalk committee would meet, it was, it served to a large respect for a conduit for neighborhoods to bring to council's attention where there were deficiencies in connectivity, where they saw priorities being in terms of, where they needed pedestrian facilities. And so it wasn't just a haphazard process. It was brought to us because it was brought to us by people who were actually, living in a place where they felt it was hazardous. They didn't have the means to cross a street or walk along a street. And the connectivity went unnoticed by planners because it's just, the city is large and it's complicated, and the people who actually live there understood what was needed. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other council member comments or questions? All right, Councilmember Piedmont. Yeah. My next thing then is if there are no more other comments or questions, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the, boy, I guess I didn't write this one out. I guess it's to approve the report and the recommendations
The funding
for funding.
recommendations.
Great, so a motion to approve the funding recommendations as presented by the Sidewalk Committee.
So
Do I
moved.
have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any last comments? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Well, just to say, I'm looking forward to additional conversations about the sidewalk fund and the most effective and efficient use of the funds, and with council input, but also following our Safe Streets for All plan. And there are some items that are unclear in the report, and I think we'll seek to get more clarity in the coming months.
Great, thank you. Other comments? Will the clerk please call the roll on the motion to approve the recommendations in the Sidewalk Committee report?
Councilmember Flaherty?
Yay.
Ruff?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stassberg?
Yes.
Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yay.
Rosenbarger? Yes. Asari?
Yay.
Thanks.
Thank you, and that passes with a vote of 9-0. Next, we have a report from the Jack Hopkins Committee. And just to be really clear, we also have a resolution later with the Jack Hopkins Committee. And so the report and the resolution, the general report and the funding recommendations do need to be dealt with separately this evening. Thank you. Councilmember Asari.
Well, thank you all so much for letting me speak in this marathon of reports tonight, and thank you to the public who've been here. I mean, it is almost 9 o'clock, and I'm very much eagerly looking forward to public comment, so I will be as quick as possible here. To my fellow council members who are on this committee, please feel free to interject if there's anything that I leave out in this summation of the report that's already in the packet. But this year marks the 33rd cycle of the Jack Hopkins program, named for former council member Jack Hopkins, which has distributed to this point over $6.2 million in grants since 1993. The goal of the Hopkins Fund is to support the most vulnerable in our community. And in 2025, we had allocated $500,000 in new funds, and there was an additional $30,000 left over from previous years. And so we're recommending a total allocation this year of $510,377.27. We received 38 applications requesting nearly $1 million in funding, almost double what we could allocate. And so after rigorous review and discussion, which is all available publicly, they were all open door meetings, we're recommending grants to 35 agencies and programs. The committee consisted of 4 council members and 3 community members with social service experiences, and I would like to thank my colleagues, Courtney Daly, Dave Rallo, Andy Ruff, and our public members, Nordia McNish, Cameron Greer, and Eddie Rue, for their thoughtful work. I also want to recognize Director Killian Hansen and Cody Toothman from HAND. They're not here anymore, but for their vital support, and to City Council staff for their incredible work and support here. This year we introduced 2 key improvements, sort of following up on the recommendations from last year's committee. The first was an adoption of a formal scoring rubric, at least a pilot of such, to bring greater transparency transparency and structure, though we agree that it needs significant refinement for future cycles, but it was, I think, a step in the right direction. We all agreed. Secondly, we streamlined interviews in the past, really for the last 30 years. What the tradition of this committee has been to hold very, very long interviews where every single person who applied would be invited to an interview for the most part, and then just given about 3 minutes to more or less go over the same things that they went over in their application. What we chose to do this year is only invite people who we had questions for to come. We asked them pointed questions, and we asked that they use their interview time to answer those questions. And I think we thought that this gave us better time to really dive in and do due diligence on things that we were unclear about. I think it also made our process more efficient, without compromising fairness. We also noted in the report several areas for future improvement. One, I think something that we've said every year is that our timeline is so compressed, and so we recommend starting a bit earlier and adding a couple of meetings to give the committee a bit more time for deliberation. We discussed also tying into our work to moving towards outcome-based budgeting, about setting perhaps yearly specific funding priorities as a body, not as a committee, but rather as a city council, so that as we appoint the committee each year, or perhaps it could happen earlier during our budget session, that we sort of tie a set of priorities that we want this funding to prioritize, right, to address. Otherwise, right now, we're sort of treating all emergency needs sort of equally, which I think was a little bit of a challenge for us. And we're also interested in exploring potential changes to the application process itself, potentially looking at things like a universal application, so that people can just apply sort of once to multiple city funds, and perhaps even that might give us opportunities to collaborate with the county on something like that. And above all, we reaffirmed the importance of increasing the Jack Hopkins Fund. The needs in our community far exceed our current capacity to respond. And so we're voting later today on the resolution to approve these recommendations, allocate the funds, and authorize related administrative costs. I think there is also a technical assistance meeting already scheduled for grantees for June 16th, I believe. And so in closing, just want to thank everybody for their work in our community, and it is such a pleasure to be on this committee. You learn so much about the amazing work that so many people across this community are doing to keep Bloomington safe, secure, and moving forward. So thank you so much. Hope other committee members, was that okay?
Councilmember, sorry, can you deal with the conflict of interest disclosure statements that we need
I
to?
will pass over to Councilmember Daley.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
I make a motion that the uniform conflict of interest disclosure statements of Nordia McNish and Eddie Rue Jr. and their participation in the committee be approved and accepted. By roll call vote, please.
Second.
Thank you.
A quick
Yeah.
line of commentary here. In the past, if there's ever been a community member, so the committee is required to have community members that have experience with social agencies, and as a consequence, it's common that those people selected for the committee might have some conflicts of interest. The way that we deal with this is by having them disclose those conflicts of interest and then not allowing them to either vote or contribute to discussion around agencies to which they disclose areas of conflict. In the past, these letters of conflict of interest would be signed by the office of the mayor, but this year they've recommended that the committee chair sign those, so that's what we are doing.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because the committee chair has typically appointed those community members, so that's why they're wanting to do it this time. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about the conflict of interest? Any questions or concerns about the report? Councilmember Piedmont-Smith? Yeah, we do, but I just am taking questions first, I guess. Yeah.
So
Councilmember
I do have a
Piedmont-Smith.
question. It's not about the conflict of interest.
Okay, well,
It's a quick.
yeah, okay. Will the clerk please call the roll on the conflict of interest? motion?
Councilmember Ruff? Yes. Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Stossberg,
Yes.
Daly. Yes. Zulik,
Yes.
Rosenbarger. Yes. Asari,
Yes.
and Flaherty.
Yes.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I just want to ask, Councilmember Asari mentioned a rubric that was used for scoring the applications. I don't find that in our packet. Is that something you can share with colleagues?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Will do.
It is in the packet. If you click one of the links in the other Jack Hopkins stuff, I found it. Yeah, it's somewhere in there. Yeah.
Regardless, I'll
thanks.
send back around, and also it
Thank
should
you.
be posted publicly for people to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Again, the caveat being that I think this was very much a sort of pilot. We set up good intentions, and then in deliberation, some of it broke down, and we were aware of that. But instead of sort of going back to redo the rubric, we sort of took note of all these things for future years. So I don't think it's a perfect rubric by any means. This year basically gave us a standard vocabulary to all talk about while reviewing, and make sure that everybody sort of reviewed them through the same lens. But yeah, had some limitations, I would say, for sure.
Great, thank you.
In addition to the link that you referred to, Hopi, the rubric also is posted on the website related to various meetings of the Jack Hopkins Committee.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions about the report? Wonderful. We finally moved on to reports from the public. So now we have finally entered the reports from the public time. So if you are a member of the public who would like to make a comment on an item not on the agenda, if you could please make your way to the podium. If you're online and would like to make a comment, if you could use the reactions tab to raise your hand, or you can send a chat message to the host. Either way, you will have up to 3 minutes to say your piece. I do have somebody at the podium right now, and I see him signing in. Thank you very much. If you could state your name for the record. Actually, I'm going to make sure that our staff has the timer all set. Wonderful. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam President, council members. This is Christopher Emge representing the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce and our nearly 900 members. 80% of them are small businesses, your friends, your neighbors. I'm here tonight to talk about a critical issue affecting our local economy, and that's the permitting and development process in the city of Bloomington. I was very encouraged tonight by Director Hiddle's comments regarding the residential side. Working with CBU on this, I think we're making great progress. But the process for businesses, we know it is broken. Across all sectors, what I hear from my messages and from our members is the permitting process takes too long. It's too rigid. It's unpredictable and very unclear. Businesses, especially small, locally owned variety, are losing time, money, and opportunity while they're trying to comply with a system that is not built with them in mind. Looking around, we see a lot of empty commercial space. Bloomington is visible commercial vacancy problem of retail strips, standalone buildings, even downtown properties empty. The cost of bringing a new tenant into a space often triggers a full site plan requirement under the UDO, requiring upgrades to landscaping, parking, and more. Even if it's not even a new use, it's the same as the last. This approach punishes reuse and reinvestment. We need to ask ourselves, are we incentivizing revitalization or unintentionally promoting vacancy in this process? We look at the Hopewell, or canary in the coal mine. The former IU hospital site, now Hopewell, is a showcase for what is not working, at least with zoning. Many parcels there are zoned medical, making it nearly impossible to lease restaurants, retail, office users without complex zoning process. So we have this very transformative neighborhood I'm very excited about, yet we're sort of choking its potential at the zoning point around it. We can't afford to stall business growth. I think what we've heard in this meeting and many others is the Senate Bill 1 significantly impacts local revenue sources. If we don't grow our commercial tax base, we risk facing hard choices on public service. Let's be clear, business growth is not optional, it is essential. So protecting Bloomington's fiscal future requires that a system doesn't block our entrepreneurs before they even get started. We recommended some things that might work in the future, but let's just think about reframing the word equity to include the barber, the baker, and the first-time entrepreneur. And people who deserve a shot at building something without facing six-figure barriers just to open their doors. The Chamber is ready to work with the City of Bloomington to build that system. We don't see problems, we see solutions. We want to support a thriving, diverse business community and a more resilient tax base. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Attorney Lehner, is there anybody who's raised their hand on Zoom?
No.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we do have another commenter. If you could go ahead and sign in and then state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I know we have a lot of stuff to discuss tonight, so I don't want to disrupt this process, but I just want to very quickly introduce myself. My name is Julius Mitchell. I am the new Legislative Affairs Specialist in the Office of the Mayor. So I'm going to be sitting in on a lot of these meetings going forward, so I didn't want you guys to have to guess who I am. I figured it would be best to just tell you up front. So in the interest of time, it's nice to meet you all, and I look forward to working together.
Thank you and welcome. Is there anybody else in chambers who would like to make a public comment tonight on items not on the agenda? Has anybody raised their hand on Zoom?
Yes, we do see one.
Okay, thank you. When you are unmuted, you'll have up to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jennifer Presley, and I come to you in my capacity as council president of the Monroe County Council. I just wanted to say I appreciate, yesterday was the groundbreaking ceremony of the convention center expansion, and I appreciated cross-collaboration efforts from both city and county electeds. I know overwhelmingly majority of electeds supported this project. And one thing that really kind of grabbed my attention in this particular meeting, besides just being nerdy and having nothing else to do to watch the meeting this evening, was Councilmember Rosenberger's comment regarding the affordable housing units that are going to, that are proposed to be coming down. And I think about this because I too had a constituent that reached out and wants to talk to me about that. But in the spirit of collaboration, since we all like to say that word, I really would like to challenge our city colleagues to come talk to us here in the county. Again, just staying in my financial lane, and as the fiscal body member of the county, just one of 7, I am very much interested in what is going to happen. But as much talks that we've had happen tonight regarding affordable and attainable housing, I think that it's up to, although those buildings are county owned and they are also in city limits, that's something that should be on both bodies to figure out how we can make this right for those tenants as well. So I put a call to action to not just talk about it, but to also be about it. And I look forward to having welcoming conversations with city colleagues to figure out how we can truly talk about the collaboration and making affordable housing and attainable housing for our residents. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any, I don't see anybody else moving in chambers. Did anybody else raise a hand on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much for your public comments tonight. And if you change your mind, there'll be another public comment period at the end of the meeting. Moving on to appointments to boards and commissions. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Daley.
Thank you. On behalf of Interview Committee Team B, I would like to make the following recommendation for the Transportation Commission. We recommend Barbara McKinney to seat C1, Stephen Volan to seat C2, and Brian Drummy to seat C3.
Second.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the recommendations from Team B? Councilmember Asari.
Just a very brief one. To what extent, because I know, let me take a step back, sorry. Wonderful recommendations. There has been some discussion about the role of this body, particularly as pertaining to the now defunct Parking Commission, and to what extent did conversations about what the purpose of this body is going to be come up amongst the people that you are appointing?
Well, in particular, regarding the now defunct Parking Commission, too, for example, that was, we had a lot of really good applicants. We had, I think, 9 applicants for 3 seats. Many of them were from the Parking Commission. So we wanted to make sure that we were representing all of the units that were being combined into this new Transportation Commission. And so, that was, we had to be very choosy about our representation, unfortunately, because we had so little space for everybody. We would have loved everybody's expertise. But we wanted to make sure that we were covering all those areas together, that we felt everything was fairly well represented in this new body.
Could I ask a follow-up, because I realized that I didn't ask my question very clearly. We had it's my fault, I wasn't communicating clearly, and it's late, I'm sorry. When we approved this commission, we had some discussions about whether or not to include stronger language about parking, as an example. The operative clauses of the Parking Commission, whether those powers should remain with this new commission, which is now fairly advisory in its function. Was that a conversation that was had? Because I know that the reason this is difficult to have, I'm not trying to call anybody specifically out, but I mean, people who you've just mentioned made comments saying that we should keep this commission as a parking commission, or keep the elements of the Parking Commission in. We didn't choose to do that, so I'm curious whether or not that conversation came up as part of your appointment procedures with the candidates that we're appointing.
I don't believe that it did. Am I misremembering? Or am I? Yeah, that was not part of our conversation.
Are there other questions? I do have a question. That seat C3 is the way that it's titled on board is they want it to be MCCSC affiliated in some way. Is that?
We had only one applicant who was MCCSC affiliated, and unfortunately, he did not live in city limits, which was one of the requirements.
Okay.
We opted for, this candidate had many other good reasons also as what we felt was an attractive appointment, but also thought this candidate has young children and they bike a lot. And we thought, well, that's the closest maybe that we can get to that perspective. So that was yet another element that we took into consideration, since we did not have an MCCSC applicant.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Flaherty.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Stossberg. And just following up on the same point, I know our outreach methods are varied for how we recruit to commissions, but does anyone know if, by chance, folks at MCCSC were contacted about the appointment and stuff? Okay,
They had been, yes.
Yeah, I actually messaged the superintendent and spoke with her in person about it, and I think that the mayor did as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? If the clerk could please call the roll on these interview team recommendations.
Councilmember Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stossberg?
Yes.
Daly?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Rosenberger?
Yes.
Asari?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
And Ruff? Yes. Thanks.
Thank you. That passes 9-0. And now we have finally reached legislation for the evening. And please keep in mind that we did change the order on this in the updated agenda that went out this afternoon. So we should be starting with ordinance 2025-22.
Missed it. All right, then, in that case, I move ordinance 2025-22 be introduced and read by the city clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll on the motion to introduce? Just for clarity, we have to call the roll on all of these motions tonight because we have a member online.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Daley, sorry, Stossberg,
Yes.
Daley,
I panicked. Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Asare, Flaherty,
Yes.
Ruff, and Rallo.
Yes.
Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Yes. Ordinance 2025-22, authorizing and approving a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement with Henderson Court Housing LLP. The synopsis is, the Indiana Code provides the opportunity for municipalities and owner-developers to partner in the development of affordable housing through a payment in lieu of taxes, known as a pilot, agreement per IC 36-1-8-14.3. This agreement ensures that the city receives some taxes from the property owner on real property subject to a tax exemption under state law. The Indiana Code requires the developer to agree to the terms of the pilot, including the amounts and timing of the payments to the city. The Common Council must approve the pilot by passing an ordinance. If approved, the Henderson Court pilot will result in the rehabilitation of 150 affordable apartment units in an affordable housing community. The pilot will serve families whose household income is 60% or below the area median income.
Thank you.
I move that ordinance 2025-22 be adopted.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Who do we have to present 2025-22 today?
Hi, everyone. Jane Cooper-Smith, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development, and I'm here tonight with Janine Betsy, Director of Tax Credit Development for the Gene B. Glick Company, and Danny Miller, and I didn't catch your title. Development Manager. So I'll present, and then we'll have Janine and Danny for color commentary as needed, if that's all right. Okay, first I want to acknowledge that I have the ordinance numbers incorrectly listed on the main slide here. So that's obviously 2521 and 2522. My overview summarizes some general information about both proposals and then gets into the specifics. So I'll just dive in. I'll give you a brief overview of pilots, an overview of the company, details on each property, a summary of the proposed agreements, and a summary of outreach to local government units. So here, payment in lieu of taxes or pilot agreements are facilitated by state code and administered on a local level. Pilots may support the renovation, acquisition, or construction of affordable housing units. They require that long-term affordability be guaranteed through an extended use agreement, which is with the IHCDA. In pilots, the property owner makes a payment at a percentage of the overall tax liability. In the proposals today, the payments are proposed to be fixed at 45% of the current tax liability with an annual escalator of 3%. The pilot payments, this is by state code, are then directed to the city, which means that 100% of the related tax revenue is diverted from other local government units. So the pilot payment comes to the city. It does not get redistributed to the government units. It gets deposited here into an affordable housing fund. Just wanted to underscore that. So pilots are a trade-off of community goods. They decrease revenue in exchange for the retention or creation of affordable housing units. The Gene B. Glick Company is an Indianapolis-based housing developer and manager. The company owns and is the long-term operator of the sites in the proposals today. They own 21,000 units in 13 states, 7,200 of which are managed by the nonprofit Glick Foundation. The city has had a favorable experience with Glick properties in Bloomington, and they have a specific model where they have on-site coordinators at their developments, which is perhaps why they're successful and well-managed. The Glick Company has requested 2 pilot agreements to support the renovation and long-term affordability and management of both Cambridge Square and Henderson Court. Pilots exist as a relatively low barrier incentive because it is difficult to close the financial gap for affordable housing developments. Rent rates are restricted, which is the whole point of having these affordable housing restrictions. So the rent cannot be increased to fund improvements or updates. Janine and Danny can speak to the cash flow impacts year over year, but that's an important benefit for their management of the property. And then I just wanted to mention the but-for test. In order to issue a pilot, we need to know that the project cannot be completed without it. But for the issuance of the pilot, the capital stack wouldn't come together, the project wouldn't move forward. So I'm going to continue in the order Cambridge Square and then Henderson Court, but I acknowledge that.
I would like for you to skip the Cambridge Square
Okay,
stuff
skip
for
that
now.
one.
Thank you.
All right. Henderson Court. Henderson Court is located at 2475 South Winslow Court. It was acquired by the Glick Foundation in late 2024. It features 150 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units at 60% of the AMI. The requested payment is $80,400 or 45% of the tax liability. That's the 24 pay 25 tax liability, and then there's the escalator of 3% annually. This makes the annual subsidy $98,206, and the annual per unit subsidy is $935. The term of the pilot, of the proposed pilot, is 17 years, and the term of affordability for the site is no less than 45 years. So the term of the pilot runs with the financing for the renovations, and the term of affordability runs with state and federal affordable housing incentives. So we're ensured that. I included these AMI tables because we talk about AMI all the time. I thought it would be helpful for the public record, and I thought it would be helpful just for this discussion as a reference. So the highlighted fields are the dates for the effectiveness, but you can see the 60% AMI line, which starts with $45,540, and it increases depending on the number of individuals living in that household. So this is the salary table. That's what that household is earning at 60% of the AMI. And then I just wanted to say that given the impacts of SB1 on all of our units of government, and given that the pilot would divert all of this tax revenue to the city's affordable housing fund, staff communicated the impact analysis with leadership in each unit. So the responses were pretty similar. I mean, everyone was really happy to be informed about the consideration of this pilot. There was general support. Everyone acknowledged that there was a trade-off. I would say with MCCSC in particular, they want to do more analysis. So I feel really pleased. Each conversation was really positive, and so we will communicate about tax abatements, TIF and how that works, and pilots, and just kind of start doing an exchange where we're sharing information. And so I committed to each of these government units that we would share proposals well in advance of coming to council, I think with the aim of doing that before it goes to EDC next time, and feel good about that. So I will back up to the Henderson Court proposal slide, and I would be happy to take questions about this.
Thank you. Do we have questions specifically about the Henderson Court proposal? Councilmember Daley? Or pilots in general, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that information. That was helpful. I'm going to kind of form my question as I'm asking it, because you kind of answered it a little bit. My question was about my concern for like MCCSC losing revenue, because they're already going to be losing, as we all know, a ton of revenue. So I'm glad you had that conversation with them, and that it went well. do we have any sort of plan or thought process for maybe how we're going to maybe help make up some of that revenue to, for example, MCCSC, or no, it's just we're figuring?
Well, the state, or not to interrupt you.
No, you're good. I was kind of petering off.
The state code dictates what happens with that funding. So it is supposed to be deposited in an affordable housing fund, and then that can be used to create, to produce units or to renovate units at 80% of the AMI or below. So these pilot payments have a really narrow purpose.
Yes, I mean, outside of the pilot
Yeah.
money then.
And then I would say, outside of the pilot, everything that we are working on is in concert with what MCCSC needs. So we're not writing checks to MCCSC, but we are doing everything that we can to create housing units to welcome, working families back into Bloomington City Core, which is really one of the challenges. So one of the challenges for MCCSC, of many, is the competition with charter schools. I would name that as a challenge. And then our overall population decline and our aging population. And so all of our work is to really try to balance that and bring people back into our core. I don't know if that's satisfactory, but outside of everything that we're doing, we don't have a specific way to drive revenue back to them.
It's a start. I appreciate that. I know it's quite a conundrum. So thank you for answering that.
Thank you. Other council member questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
So for Henderson Court, I'm looking at the tax liability table at the end of your packet.
Okay.
It looks, I just want to make sure I understand this. So in the last year, 2043, the cumulative tax savings for Henderson Court is $1,286,669. So is that the total amount that the city of Bloomington and the other taxing units is giving up through this pilot agreement?
I'm just pulling that up, and Jessica, if you have it in front of you and can answer, that's fine too. All right, if you don't mind giving me just a second. I have two mini pilot folders. Okay. And we're looking at Henderson Court. And you're looking at so you're looking at the 1,286,669 figure?
Yes, it's in the right column.
Yes, so that is the value of the life of the subsidy, yeah.
So that's what the public entities, including the city, is giving up.
Yes, and then in the column preceding that, the cumulative pilot is what they are paying.
Okay, and then in the same table, there's a column entitled Full Taxes, No Pilot. And the tax amount, 178,606, I'm looking at, again, the 24 paid, 25 tax liability. It says full taxes for all of those 17 years is 178,606. How can that be? Wouldn't the assessment increase and the taxes therefore increase?
The assessment will increase. Obviously, we don't, excuse me, I guess we're all having vocal problems tonight. So the assessment will increase. We don't know, by what percentage during what years, but the pilot payment, we prescribe it to increase 3% annually. So we don't recalculate it based on the AV. In pilot terms, you set the rate in advance. And so that's why the pilot payment column reflects that 3% increase annually.
Okay, so you use the current tax rate And you just,
as our base, yep.
and you just add 3% in the next
Yeah,
column.
so it's theoretically, that 3% annually is keeping up with market growth. Yeah, and then we leave that full taxes column as is because we're demonstrating that we're not estimating that.
Okay, I have another question, but I can wait if you want to
Okay.
go to somebody else.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that a little bit because I'm a little bit confused by what you just said. So if the cumulative tax savings on this is the 1.2 million, but that's based on the full tax liability staying the same, and we know that that tax won't necessarily stay the same, like, is that just,
I would like to check with Controller McClellan as she prepared the table, so just, you know what we're looking at.
That's the only way that we have
if
to...
you could state your name for the record.
Controller McClellan. That's the only way that we have to estimate what the annual tax savings would be. That's kind of like our most conservative estimate. And then taxes will go up every year, but we're not going to estimate that in that table. They will probably have... the developer may have a benefit if taxes go up. The pilot does not increase, the pilot stays the same. But at the least, this is how much tax savings that they will see. And they can use that number when they have to go get financing for and build the rest of their project. That's the information they need to know right now. And there is a chance that there will be more savings to the developer in the future as taxes go up.
so that's kind of like a minimum number that public entities will lose in terms of revenue loss?
Yes. And
Okay.
I think one thing that Controller McClellan highlighted is maybe helpful for the council to know. This benefit has two roles for the developer, so they can count it as part of their capital stack for the development or the renovation, and they benefit annually from the cash flow savings. So the annual cash flow savings helps with the ongoing management of the property with the hiring of these care managers, I think is the title, for their on-site staff. And the care managers are, they're there full-time, they're deeply engaged, they're helping residents with life management. I don't know if the Glick folks or if the council's interested in hearing more about that, they can talk about that. But this is just to say it has dual import for the property.
Okay, thank you. Are there other council member questions? Okay, I have another question then. Oh, and I want to acknowledge, I can't see Councilmember Rallo right now on the screen. Does he have his hand raised at all? No. Okay, thank you. So if we go with that, like $1.2 million, just so I make sure that I'm understanding, so for this project, the developer contribution, it says is $6.7 million, is that right? So like in theory, they're getting that $1.2 million that like tax revenue is being lost, and they're committing to invest $6.7 million into renovations for the property. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you agree? Yes. Do you want to add anything to that response? Okay, that's fine.
My name's Janine Betsy.
Please come to the microphone so that.
Sorry.
Thank you.
My name's Janine Betsy, and I do work for the Gene B. Glick Company, and so I'm very short. But also those, we took the investments from the pilot savings and we increased the scope of work, and then we will fund an annual service coordinator position that costs about $80,000 with benefits. It definitely pays the living wage, and then that person puts together a service plan with the residents, and we measure the residents' impact on the 10, we measure measure 10 levels of self-sufficiency, with most important being housing secure, food secure, and then we kind of work down the list of whether or not people need employment or other items. But we actively measure those and report on those annually, and the service coordinators are measured on their ability to help residents meet their own goals. But this property is actually been purchased by the Housing Foundation, and so if the project did not move forward, it's technically eligible to be exempt, so it wouldn't pay property taxes at all. So doing a tax credit rehab and a pilot puts it back on the tax rolls at a known amount so that we know what sort of resources we have to increase our scope of work. So we added HVAC, we have all new electrical panels there, we have the service coordinator, and then we also added washer and dryers, putting them in the units, which we usually don't put them in the units. We usually have residents bring them. So we were able to add those very specific items because of the pilot.
Add them to the plan.
Correct, add them to the full scope of work. Yeah.
And then just to really highlight what Janine was describing, the Jean B. Glick Foundation, Housing Foundation, which is a nonprofit, it's a 501c3, they purchased the property in late 2024. And because they're a nonprofit, the property was eligible for tax exemption. So the foundation applied for that tax exempt status, and they anticipate that it will be awarded later this year, this summer. And the idea for them is that they will hold this tax exempt status during the period while renovations are happening. And when they close, I guess, on your permanent financing and activate the pilot, at that time, they will pay this predetermined fee. So I think what Ms. Betsy is saying is that it's a different situation in this case where if the pilot doesn't go forward, the tax exemption would likely kick in. But the pilot is essential for them to complete their capital stack and add the benefits of the care coordinator on site and the increased rent improvements that they're able to make to the units.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
So do I understand correctly that the Henderson Court project is actually eligible for a total tax exemption, and they're delaying that until after this pilot runs its course?
So, no. The tax exempt status is available to them at this time because the nonprofit foundation owns the property. When they close on their permanent financing, I think I'm way up on the mic. When they close on their permanent financing, they will have a private partner as an investor, and that would push them out of their tax exempt status. So they anticipate that they will lose that tax exemption, and that is why they are requesting the pilot. It is complex, so I'm happy to pause and have us talk about this in more detail.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions right now? Okay, I'll go then. So if we vote no on this pilot, then it would stay in the non-profit or the foundation, and continue to be exempt and not have improvements made? Is that, because you said the but-for, and we were talking about the but-for earlier, so like you as staff are saying, unless we do this, like, these things won't happen.
Yeah, and I think I'll just look to Janine while I'm making statements and tell me if this is incorrect, but I assume that based on what they have communicated, there would be a reduction in the types of improvements that would be made, the scope of the renovation would be reduced, and the care coordinator position would be in question.
Correct. Those are all accurate statements.
And so the care coordinator position, I just want to highlight the city's perspective, having spoken with Housing and Neighborhood Development, our legal department. We are supportive of this pilot in part because of who the partner is. The Glick company has a great track record in our community, and it is because of the ways that they manage their properties that they are able to successfully, safely, cleanly house people at lower income levels. Some of the challenges that we're seeing with the properties that we discussed on a very surface level in our abatement presentation, for example, do not have the baked-in structure that Glick relies on for their properties that they have across the country. So this model is really critical to the success of the property.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and go to public comment on ordinance 2025-22. So at this time, if there are members of the public who would like to comment on this ordinance and this pilot project, specifically for the Henderson Court housing, if you're in chambers, you can go ahead and make your way to the podium. And if you're online, you can go ahead and use the reactions tab to raise your hand or send a chat message to the host. I don't see anybody moving in chambers right now. I'm going to give a minute and make sure that if people want to raise their hand, they're able to. Does anybody raise their hand on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Seeing no public comment, we are back to council member comment. Are there council members who would like to make a comment regarding ordinance 2025-22? Councilmember Asari.
Just a super quick one. I mean, obviously, this is the third time I've got to hear this presentation, so that's why I didn't ask any questions. But I mean, just to emphasize the fact that this is the proposal is fantastic. It creates long-term affordability at that AMI rate that we've talked about in so many cases is really missing, and for a large number of units. And so a lot of them at that 60% or below AMI, and in many cases below that, while allowing the developer to complete much needed renovations without sacrificing affordability. And so I just think that it's a really, really positive, the type of things that we want to see in the way that we want to use this tool. And so I'm in great support of it, and aligns very well with so many of the other things that we've brought up in other contexts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members wish to make a comment? I'll make a comment. I appreciate Councilmember Daley bringing up MCCSC and the other taxing entities that will kind of lose in this deal. And the thing for me personally that kind of stopped any other questioning did have to do with that tax exempt status. And it's certainly better to have more fully renovated spaces and have some element of taxing coming in so that there can be some public good coming from the taxing, but also a whole lot of public good for the residents and the folks who are actually living there. So I will plan on supporting this evening. And unless somebody else raises their hand for a council member comment, which I don't see, will the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 2025-22?
Councilmember Stossberg?
Yes.
Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Rosenbarger?
Yes.
Asari?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Ruff? Yes. Rallo?
Yes.
And Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. And now we will move on.
Thank you. I move that ordinance 2025-21 be introduced and read by the city clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to introduce ordinance 2025-21. Will the clerk please call the roll on that motion to introduce?
Councilmember Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Rosenbarger?
Yes.
Asari?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Ruff?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes. Stossberg?
Councilmember Stossberg?
I'll abstain on this one. Sorry, so that motion passes 801. Will the clerk please read? Boy, I'm forgetting my job.
No, it's my job.
Oh, no. No, will the clerk, yeah, the clerk has to read first.
Or a miss, I'm sorry.
There we are.
Ordinance 2025-21, authorizing and approving a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement with Cambridge Square of Bloomington, LP. Synopsis is, the Indiana Code provides the opportunity for municipalities and owner-developers to partner in the development of affordable housing through a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement per IC 36-1-8-14.3. This agreement ensures that the city receives some taxes from the property owner on real property, subject to a tax exemption under state law. The Indiana Code requires the developer to agree to the terms of the pilot, including the amounts and timing of the payments to the city. The Common Council must approve the pilot by passing an ordinance. If approved, the Cambridge Square pilot will result in the rehabilitation of a 153-unit community of flats designed for residents 62 plus or differently abled whose incomes are 60% or below the area median income.
Thank you.
So now I move ordinance 2025-21 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. And before we do the presentation on this one, I need to recuse myself from this discussion about Cambridge Square, which is why I stopped you earlier from presenting on that one at all. I have a family member living at that complex, so in order to ensure there's no appearance of conflict of interest, I will not be participating in discussion or vote on this matter, and will hand proceedings over to Vice President Piedmont Smith. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Cooper-Smith, do you have further presentation on this particular project?
Just a few words on this one. I think if we could have the slide deck back, thanks. So Cambridge Square of Bloomington is located at 307 North Pete Ellis Drive, nestled between, Woodbridge Post Office on 10th Street and the Cat Cafe in Williamsburg Court off of 3rd Street. You're welcome. I'm just kidding. The property is 45 years old and features 153 one-bedroom units. They are available to residents 62 and up or differently abled and earning 60% or less of the AMI. Sorry, the 60% AMI applies to everyone, and residents can be 62 and older or differently abled. Just a reminder of the income limits. The AMI at 60% is $65,040 for a 4-person household or $45,540 for a 1-person household. What did I do? Yeah. We did it. Okay. And then the proposed agreement details are quite similar. The payment's smaller because the assessed value is lower. So the Cambridge Square agreement would include an annual payment in lieu of $29,376 with a 3% annual escalation. That makes the annual subsidy $35,841 and the annual per unit subsidy $192. The term of the pilot is 17 years, which is the length of the financing for the project again. However, the term of affordability is no less than 45 years. The agreement auto-terminates after 17 years. It can terminate if both parties agree, and it can terminate if the property, through sale to a different developer or through non-compliance. So if it sells to a developer that does not meet the code requirements for 60% AMI and having a long-term agreement with IHCDA, that would terminate the that would terminate the pilot. I think those are the broad strokes. And then on this pilot, it is entirely on the private side of the organization, so there's no tax exemption change happening. So I think that's enough for the overview, I guess. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Director Cooper-Smith. Are there any questions about the Cambridge Square? Yes, Councilmember Asari.
Just a super brief one. Am I right in remembering that though the tax abatement lasts 17 years, that the requirement that it serve that population is forever?
or something like that. It was so long ago that we had this conversation.
Janine can speak to that.
So there, the IHCDA agreements,
Could you please remind us of your name for the record and
I'm
use the
sorry.
microphone? Thank you.
My name's Janine Betsy, yeah. So the affordability period from IHCDA is governed by a land use restricted agreement, the LURA, and that is a 15-year initial period and a 30-year extended use period, and you are not able to opt out of the extended use period anymore. Additionally, the bond LURA that also is in the project requires that as long as you have Section 8 in the property, that you will continue to maintain affordability, and Cambridge Square is 100% Section 8. So we would be required to keep it affordable in perpetuity. Again, the Section 8 contract requires that as well. We really value Section 8 as you can't get new contracts anymore, and that means that the residents are not paying more than 30% of their income towards rent, and HUD covers the balance. These are not part of the intended budget cuts at HUD, and these are long-term subsidies that likely will never come back for any new projects. So we find at our organization it's imperative that we maintain them and keep them affordable as long as possible. Because it's some of the most important things that we can do. And a lot of these properties are located in some of our best neighborhoods. Like you couldn't build Henderson Court where it is today, nor could you build Cambridge Square where it is today and keep it affordable for residents. We make a commitment to keep our properties affordable in perpetuity, but those are the documents and the timelines that guide the 3 or 4 agreements that we'll sign to keep it affordable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about the Cambridge Square pilot proposal? I guess I will ask one, and I just notice a big difference in the per unit subsidy between Cambridge Square, where it's $192, and Henderson Court, where it was $935. Is that just the extent of the renovation that's different, or?
Could be. I can cite two. Yeah, go ahead.
It's primarily driven by the acquisition because Henderson Court was just purchased in December 2024, and the other project has been in the portfolio for such a long time. And frequently when properties are sold that have 100% Section 8 units, they're sold above the value that can be financed because the Section 8 contract has a long-term value. So the Cambridge Square of Bloomington, as is appraisal, was significantly less than the Henderson Court family-sized appraisal and cost to purchase those properties. So that's really the difference. Henderson Court also needs more work than Cambridge Square of Bloomington. GLIC has an extensive ongoing maintenance program at all of our properties. We do asphalt every year. If we're not doing a big rehab, we're still doing a certain amount of windows and doors every year, HVAC systems. So frequently a property that's been in the GLIC family portfolio for a number of years is better kept than a property that we purchased. And so since we just purchased Henderson, it both costs more per unit and the need of the work is greater.
Thank you for that. I had another question that I meant to ask with the other item, and now I need to find it. Sorry. It's in the actual text of the resolution. Let's see.
For Country View or sorry, for Cambridge Square or Henderson Court?
Cambridge Square.
Okay.
I believe this language was in both of them, but, so at the bottom of the first page of the actual ordinance language, that whereas clause at the last one on that page, it says $192 per unit, blah, 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 due on or before May 10th and November 10th for each assessment year after the closing of the project in accordance with section 1.4 of the agreement. What is the closing of the project? What does that mean?
So I think that means the closing of the financing to facilitate the renovations.
Okay, so it doesn't mean the completion of the renovations, it means the
Closing of the financing. That's my understanding. Audrey, is that?
And I'm going to follow up with a naive question, and that is, what does closing of the financing mean?
So I can tell you what that means. Closing of the financing on a 4% tax credit deal like this, my name is Janine Betsy, by the way. It means that you close the tax credits, you're selling the bonds that makes up the debt, and you are also, that's all of the sources. So that's everything closes at once, and then you enter into a fully amortizing loan at closing. So we're immediately paying on that loan, just like you do on your mortgage at your house when you close. But the closing means that you close all those sources of financing at one time. It's really fun, but it does not mean we will close the project. We will just close on the sources of funds.
And I guess in that context then, when can we expect the first pilot payments, since they're expected after the closing of the project?
Sorry, Audrey Brittingham, City Attorney. So we agree that it really is closing of the financing, and then it references section 1.4 in the agreement. And so if you go down to section 1.4, that just outlines, they both outline when the payments are due. And you'll notice in 1.4, it makes it clear that the pilot essentially starts January 1st, 2026 of the assessment year, payable 2027. So we wouldn't actually see a pilot payment until 2027 for the payable 2026 year.
So close 2025, increase or assessment 2026, payment 2027.
Okay, and that's the first payment of 17 years?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for clarifying that. You know, we're lay people up here trying to understand all the lingo. Are there any other questions about the Cambridge Square pilot? Okay, we can go to the public. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this resolution about Cambridge Square pilot payment in lieu of taxes? I see we have one person coming to the podium. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah. Randy Cassidy, local community individual, and somewhat of a historian based on what I just heard. In 1981, I worked at Walker Standard, which is at Kingston and 3rd Street, and it had just been built. And there was a 65-year-old woman, I cannot remember her name, but I can tell you she had a 1967 XR Cougar Eliminator that she brought in. And it was something she had got for her son after he graduated college. She lived at Cambridge Square. She had been widowed, and she said, "Can you believe I can live here at what I have?" And she would come in, I would take her back. And I don't know about the financing. I do know that Cambridge Square was taken care of then. As I drive by it now, it still looks in as good a condition as it was when I took her home. So from a condition of what Glick has done, I didn't even know Glick owned it. And I thought I knew a lot about Bloomington. And it's just one of those things, when you drive by it and you see it, it's been taken care of. And from that long-term affordability, I still remember her saying that. And when I heard that, at least I should get up and say something about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any hands raised on Zoom for people who want to speak to this?
No.
No? Okay. I don't see anybody else in council chambers. So we'll come back to council members. Are there any final comments on Resolution 2025-21? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll on Resolution 2025-21?
Councilmember Zulik?
Yes.
Asari? I'm sorry, Rosenbarger?
Yes.
Asari?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Ruff?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stossberg? And Daly?
Yes.
All right, that passes with a vote of 8-0. Do we count the recusal as an abstention? Don't know. Anybody know?
It counts as, it doesn't count as a vote, so it would be.
So is it count
Yes.
as an abstention? It's 8-0-1 then?
Mhm.
Okay, there we go. And I'll hand the gavel back to President Stossberg.
Thank you. Moving on to our last piece of legislation for the evening.
I move Resolution 2025-09, put my glasses on. Yes, thank you, be introduced and read by the city clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to introduce Resolution 2025-09. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rosenbarger? Yes. Asari?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Ruff?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stossberg?
Yes.
And Daly?
Yes.
Oh, and Zulik.
Yes.
Thank you. Res-
Do we do the, oh, sorry. It's late. I move ordinance 2025-09 be adopted.
Thank
Wait,
you.
I think
Was there no
need
summary?
Don't I need to read it first?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. That was me. Boy, it is late.
It is late.
I am so
I'll
sorry.
I'll go for it. Resolution 2025-09, authorizing the allocation of the Jack Hopkins Social Services Program funds for the year 2025 and related matters. The synopsis is, this resolution brings forward the recommendations of the 2025 Jack Hopkins Social Services Committee. The principal task of the committee is to recommend funding for local social services agency proposals that best meet program criteria and best meet the needs of the community. This resolution allocates a total of $510,377.27 to 35 different agency programs. The resolution also approves the funding agreements with these agencies and authorizes the council president to execute such agreements, accepts the report of the committee, and authorizes the chair of the committee to resolve any questions regarding the interpretation of the agreements.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I'm already on summer recess right now. Yes, you should move again.
I move ordinance 2025-09 be adopted.
Resolution.
I move resolution 2025-09 be adopted.
Second.
There we go. Councilmember Asari, are you going to present the resolution and the funding recommendations?
Oh, no. They're all in the packet. I already did. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. And I don't know if there was the amendment for the clerical error. Is that necessary?
Yes.
So I'll just make mention of that. But yeah, any questions, happy to answer them.
Shall I move
Thank
Amendment
you.
1?
Yes, was Amendment 1 in the,
It was omitted from the packet by accident.
was it in the addendum?
Nope.
Oh,
Its absence was discovered about 4 p.m. today.
You want me to motion it?
Yes,
I move
please.
that Amendment 1 be introduced and something.
just,
Just be introduced.
Second.
All right, so this is just correcting a typo in the resolution, the table where it lists the recommended funding and the purpose for each grant. The purpose for Bloomington Cooperative Living was was incorrect. So this just replaces the current text with this HVAC upgrades to communal living home for Bloomington Cooperative Living.
Does anybody have any questions on the amendment? Let's go to the public then. I'll take public comment on this Amendment 1 to Resolution 2025-09. If anybody wants to make a comment about this correction of purpose. If you're in chambers, please make your way to the podium. If you're online, you can go ahead and raise your hand. Is there anybody raising?
Yes, there's one.
Okay. I do want to make sure that public commenter, we are specifically taking public comment on the amendment to the resolution, not the resolution itself. So when you are unmuted, you can go ahead and state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Her hand's not raised right now.
Okay, but I was wondering if she might want to comment on the whole resolution instead of the amendment. So for lack of any public comment about the amendment, if the clerk could, going back to council, do council members want to make any closing comments on the amendment? I'll just say thank you, Councilmember Piedmont Smith, for cross-referencing things and noticing that. Will the clerk please call the roll on Amendment 1 to Resolution 2025-09?
Councilmember Asari.
Yes.
Flaherty.
Yes.
Ruff.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Stossberg.
Yes.
Daley.
Yes.
Zulik.
Yes.
And Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, so now we are back to the resolution as amended. So are there any council member questions about the funding recommendations from the committee? No questions? I have a question. Oh, maybe I don't have a question. Hang on, I might have gotten that answered already. Oh, I actually do have a question, and it's a question from the funding agreement between the City of Bloomington, and so it's attachment A. So this might be a question for our attorney that I noticed this afternoon. One of the things that we are asking the agencies to provide in, let's see if I can figure out, Section 4, Part D, the reporting requirement, requires that the report be submitted in Word format. And I'm wondering if there's a reason why we require it to be in Word.
I'm not aware of a reason. In the past, that has been the case. This is essentially the same funding agreement that has been used last year, and I believe largely in prior years.
Okay. Is there, could we change that, and would we have to do any kind of official, does the resolution reference the way that this is worded?
Yes. Part of the resolution is adopting this funding agreement. So to change the funding agreement, we would
Okay.
need to do an amendment.
I guess I don't really feel like doing an amendment on the fly if agencies haven't complained about this in the past, but if in the future maybe we could amend that so that we don't require that in Word anymore, just because a lot of people don't necessarily use Word now because of Google Docs, et cetera, which is an issue we've come across in something else recently. So if we could just keep that in mind in the future, that would be great.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I have any other questions, so let's go ahead and move to public comment on Resolution 2025-09 as amended. If you are a member of the public who would wish to comment on this, if you're in chambers, please make your way to the podium. If you're online, you can go ahead and raise your hand using the reactions tab or send a chat message to the host. I do believe we have somebody online now, so if when you're unmuted, if you could state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes. Could, I'm not sure if that was a glitch of your audio or if that was deliberate. If you could maybe send a chat message to the host to let us know what might be going on with that, and we'll just give it a minute here for you to take a minute. Does it appear that we should try again to see if that audio can be corrected?
We'll try it again.
Okay. We've had other audio work okay. Is there any chance that this person can type their public comment into the chat? Do we have any information from the staff table?
No chat message at this time.
Okay. Yeah, any comments, of course, can be sent by email. I'm really sorry that audio seemed to be malfunctioning. We've had other Zoom comments today, so I'm not sure what there is on our end that we could do with that. Has anybody else raised a hand?
No
Okay.
hands are raised.
Thank you. Not seeing any public comment in chambers, we will bring it back to council for any last questions or closing comment. Any comments from council? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Just to thank all of the good agencies that are helping people who are in need of assistance in our community. And thank you to my colleagues and the 3 members of the public who served on the committee.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would also just like to thank everybody who served on the committee, including our community members who, we had 3 community members on that committee. And with that, if the clerk could please call the roll on Resolution 2025-09 as amended.
Councilmember Flaherty?
Yes.
Ruff? Yes. Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Strasburg?
Yes.
Daly?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Rosenberger?
Yes.
Asari?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. And that completes our legislation for the first part of this year, as a matter of fact. And now we've moved on to the second period of public comment for items not on the agenda. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on something not on the agenda, if you're in chambers, you can make your way to the podium. If you're online, you can go ahead and use the reactions tab to raise your hand or send a chat message to the host. I don't see anybody moving in chambers, but I'll give it a minute for anybody online. Has anybody raised their hands online?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll move on then to our notes of council schedule. As I mentioned, this is the final meeting before summer recess, and we will convene our next regular session on Wednesday, July 16th at 6:30. And as a reminder and clarification to the community that just because there's a break in Wednesday night meetings does not mean that we are on vacation as a council. There are still other meetings and work still does happen. Are there any other scheduling notes from council members? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.